Chapter 903. Virgil arrives at the Akatsuki headquarters. Uchiha Obito had no choice but to let Black Zetsu escort Virgil deeper into the compound, toward Nagato's hidden chamber. As they walked, Obito detailed the possible advantages and pitfalls of their plan, warning Black Zetsu and Virgil to stay vigilant. When they reached the cavern's heart, Nagato sat alone on a rough stone bench. Pale bioluminescent crystals were embedded in the walls, casting just enough light to reveal the oppressive dampness that clung to every surface. A heavy mist from the rain village drifted through the cave entrance, lending the place an almost otherworldly stillness. Nagato's eyes, normally so inscrutable, flickered with both intrigue and caution as he regarded Virgil. I never thought I'd see the day when a once legendary shinobi like Madara Uchiha would find himself outmatched by someone so junior, he murmured, his voice echoing softly in the hushed cavern. Obito stepped forward, his tone urgent. Nagato, be on your guard. Our adversary not only excels at space-time ninjutsu, but may wield abilities we've never even heard of. If we misjudge him, we risk revealing our position and endangering the entire Akatsuki. A flicker of impatience crossed Obito's face. He may be your enemy, he added with a low snort, but there's no need for the rest of us to treat him as one. Xiaonan, her features carved from shadow, met Obito's glare. Don't underestimate him, she said coolly. Underneath that calm exterior lies a threat we can't afford to ignore. Nagato's Rinnegan swirled as he considered the newcomer. The very fact that this stranger had defeated Madara Uchiha piqued his interest. It doesn't matter, he declared at last. Invite him into the Akatsuki. He wanted to prove the divine might he commanded, and recruiting Ethan, the man who had bested Madara, would do just that. Adding Ethan to their ranks was like gaining an unbeatable weapon. Nagato admitted to himself that he trusted no one completely, aside from Konan, but he was determined. I will show him the power of God. With those words, Nagato felt no hesitation. His Rinnegan affirmed his godlike authority, and before such power, obstacles ceased to exist. A low voice interrupted him. Nagato, you're rushing into this. Obito Uchiha stepped forward, his tone firm. We know nothing of Ethan's past or his intentions. This is a gamble. Nagato lifted a hand, silencing Obito's objection. His eyes glowed with crimson light. The one who can frustrate you, Uchiha Madara, must be exceptional, he said quietly. We cannot afford to turn away such strength. If we can harness this power, the Akatsuki will be strong enough to face the real threats lurking in the shadows. The two fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts, until a whisper of energy from Yu-Hu's Art of Freedom rippled through the air, shattering the stillness. The sensation was almost imperceptible, like an otherworldly drop of ink bleeding into a gentle rain. Yet it was enough to rouse Nagato's vigilance. He closed his eyes and activated his Rinnegan, straining to trace the source of the strange aura. Strangely, the energy eluded him, slipping beyond the reach of his senses. Let's see what tricks you have up your sleeve, Virgil muttered to himself. In the blink of an eye, he dissolved into thin air, vanishing like a specter and leaving only a faint echo behind. Someone's coming, Nagato announced, narrowing his eyes. Who? Obito asked immediately. In the land of rain, Nagato's perception was unrivaled. No one could hide from him except Obito himself. I'm not sure, Nagato admitted. This presence is new to me. He shook his head. I'll go investigate. I'm coming with you, Xiaonan added, stepping forward without hesitation. Nagato shook his head firmly. No, Ethan, your job is to keep me safe, but I can't have you rushing headlong into danger. I've dispatched Pain to scout ahead. They're better equipped to handle whatever awaits us. He gently barred Ethan, a young man of mysterious origin from Advancai, Eng. Konan offered no objection. In that moment, she knew her priority was Nagato's safety, especially with Uchiha Madara and Black Zetsu closing in. The rain intensified, as though the sky itself had split open. Sheets of water pounded the ancient stone path, splashing in silvery arcs before vanishing into the unending downpour. For a heartbeat, the world felt sealed off by this curtain of rain, each drop echoing the gravity of the conflict to come. Through the storm, there emerged a forbidding silhouette. Virgil's black cloak clung to him like liquid night, its edges gleaming with a cold light beneath the flickering lanterns. His footsteps were startlingly precise, each one measured, deliberate. A tense hush settled over the scene, as if the rain itself held its breath for the titanic clash about to unfold. Ethan skimmed across the slick pavement at full tilt, avoiding every puddle as though he were a phantom drifting through the storm. Rain sluiced around him, masking his movements and making his position impossible to track. Spicy Tiansen! Tian Dao Pain's roar split the night like a clap of thunder. At his command, a vast surge of chakra exploded outward, coalescing into a world-shattering force, Shinra Tenjang. Centered on Pain, the power radiated as an invisible shock wave, tearing through walls and rooftops like tissue paper. Bricks and beams rained down in a cloud of dust and gravel, and the acrid tang of gunpowder filled the air. Yet Ethan met this cataclysm with uncanny poise. Like a cheetah unleashed, he darted between falling debris and whirling dust, each dodge timed to perfection, as though he could sense the shock wave's every tremor. His movements were fluid and unhurried, untouched by the chaos around him. In that raging tempest of destruction, Ethan moved with such calm precision that he seemed inviolable, an enigma carved from the storm itself. What astonishing speed! Lord Tiandao Pain couldn't help but marvel inwardly. He was well aware of the might of his Shinra Tensei, yet he never imagined anyone could evade it so precisely and so swiftly. Ethan's feat aroused both Pain's curiosity about his power and his determination to bend him to his will. Intruder! Pain's voice boomed through the torrential rain, regal and unyielding, as if he were announcing Ethan's very existence to the heavens. He fixed his gaze on the lone figure standing before him, peering through the downpour in search of some clue that might betray his opponent's intent. "Who are you?" His words rolled across the storm, carrying an authority that brooked no refusal. "Ethan." The reply was calm, almost indifferent, as though the sudden clash were little more than a trivial interruption. Pain's brow furrowed. He hadn't expected such candor. The name rang familiar. Uchiha Obito had spoken of someone named Ethan. If this was the same man, then Ethan was pursuing Obito, and by extension entangled with the Akatsuki. Pain's mind raced. Recruiting Ethan could prove invaluable, but any clash with Obito might fracture the fragile balance of power. Lightning flashed overhead as the two adversaries locked eyes, each weighing the other's strengths and intentions. The storm was only the beginning. Chapter 904, Ethan versus the Six Paths of Pain. Nagato's conviction, channeled through the Deva path, had never been stronger. Ethan was a rare force of nature, exactly the kind of warrior the Akatsuki needed. With a voice that echoed across the room battle, Tendo Pain declared, "I am Pain, Tendo Pain, and I will bring peace to this broken world." He lifted his arms toward the heavens, eyes alight with fervor. "I am the god of pain. In my name, I will atone for the world's mistakes, erase its sorrow, and rewrite its tragedies." No sooner had those words fallen than the other five paths materialized behind him. In perfect formation, the Asura, Animal, Human, Preta, and Naraka paths took their places, creating an impenetrable living barrier before Ethan. "Ethan," Tendo Pain called again, extending a hand, "your power is exactly what we need. Join the Akatsuki, and you will never be alone. Together, we will remake this world." Ethan's lips curled into a cold, disdainful sneer. His gaze swept over the six figures arrayed before him, six avatars of divine authority. "You call yourself a god? How arrogant." He paused, the air between them crackling with tension. "My pursuit is simple. Power. Power that surpasses everything." At his words, the battlefield fell into a tense silence, the calm before the storm. "But I will not join any organization, nor will I sacrifice my freedom for the ideals of others." Ethan's voice was low but unwavering. Tiandao Pain's lips curled into a bitter smile. "It seems our ideals are fundamentally opposed," he said with a slow, mocking calm. With a sudden sigh, Pain's eyes hardened. "Very well. Let us speak in a language we both understand. Force." He snorted, then thrust his hands forward, weaving complex seals in the air. Instantly, chakra coiled through his limbs like molten steel, ready to shatter anything in its path. "Ethan," Pain continued, his voice dropping to a reverent whisper, "you and I have seen the world's cruelties, villages razed, innocence broken, the weak crushed beneath the strong. So many lives trapped in despair. Only through complete reform, rebirth from the ashes, can true peace and happiness be achieved. I ask you, stand with me. Together, we will build an ideal nation on these ruins, one without tears, one without war." He raised his voice and intoned a single phrase, "spiritual art." At once, the ground trembled violently. Cracks spidered outward from Payne's feet, splitting the earth in jagged lines. From the gaping fissure sprang two colossal beasts, an earth-brown hellhound, muscles rippling beneath its bark-like hide, and beside it a full-winged raptor, feathers glowing with otherworldly light. These were not mere summons. They were the living embodiments of Payne's will, members of the feared Six Paths, each born for warfare and fierce in wisdom. Yet, faced with such terrifying power, Ethan only smiled, a cruel, contemptuous curl of his lips. His blue eyes glinted with unwavering resolve. "Do your worst," he said softly. "I will never bow." Ethan's gaze betrayed no fear, only eager anticipation for the battle to come. He stood perfectly still, then flicked his wrist once. Instantly, raw mana whirled into hundreds of thousands of glinting phantom blades that shot forth like a meteor shower. The blades moved so fast they blurred at the edges, and in an instant they engulfed the hellhound and the great raptor. The raptor collapsed under the onslaught. The blade's power was more than enough to fell it outright. The hellhound, however, proved unnervingly resilient. Every strike merely caused its wounds to swell and erupt, only to split into several smaller, even more vicious hellhounds. They swarmed around Ethan, snapping and biting with relentless fury, as if their numbers would never run out. Before he could launch another assault, a surge of chakra roared to life in the animal path's empty, emotionless eyes. Payne's animal path clenched its fists, and the air around it hissed with energy. "Shura path!" it thundered. Ethan paused mid-form, brow furrowing. Against this endless tide of beasts, and whatever grotesque transformation Payne was about to unleash, a straightforward attack wouldn't be enough. He would need to exploit a weakness. As he gathered his thoughts, the Shurapath's mechanical limbs began to unfold, their sinister shapes clanking into place. The real trial was only just beginning. Ethan's torso twisted into an eerie arc as his arms reshaped into twin gun barrels. He leveled them at Virgil and unleashed a salvo of chakra-tracking missiles. The rockets screamed through the air, adjusting their paths mid-flight, forcing Virgil to break off his chase of the hellhound and focus solely on evasion. Virgil danced through the whistling hail of explosions with inhuman grace. Each step and pivot measured so precisely it was as if he'd foreseen the missile's every twist. Behind him, fire-bloomed blasts painted the war-torn sky in furious orange, casting harsh shadows across his cold, unflinching features. A derisive smirk tugged at Virgil's lips. "Missiles? You think that'll hold me?" In his hand, the Yama sword seemed to pulse with life. Virgil's thoughts and the blade moved as one, warping the very air around its edge. With a near-impossible flick of his wrist, he redirected its arc, unleashing a flash of silver lightning. In an instant, the blade cleaved through the oncoming rockets, slicing each tracking missile in two before they could close the distance. At that very moment, the fractured hellhounds let out one final, anguished howl as Ethan's Yama sword fell upon them. In a single fluid stroke, he cut them down, black mist and wails vanishing into the night. But the battle's true cruelty was only beginning. As Ethan raised his blade to press the advantage and end this pointless slaughter, an icy breath ghosted across his neck. From the shadows behind him emerged the human path Payne, silent as a phantom, his pale, curved claws pulsating with sinister energy. He lunged to seize Ethan in one brutal grip. Alarm flared in Ethan's chest, but instinct kicked in faster than thought. He twisted aside, and the Yama sword traced a perfect arc through the air. The blade deflected Payne's lethal strike and carved a deep gouge across his arm. Crimson blood sprayed upward, staining the stars red. "What?" Payne howled, staggering backwards, disbelief and pain twisting his features. No sooner had he cried out than the hungry ghost path Payne joined the fray. He stretched out both hands, eyes glowing with insatiable hunger, ready to draw in and nullify every ounce of Ethan's strength. But to everyone's astonishment, the power within the Yama sword proved unparalleled. It didn't just slice through flesh and bone, it could sever ideas themselves. Even the hungry ghost path's notorious ability to consume anything was rendered feeble by the blade's might. With a single crisp crack, the hungry ghost path Payne was cleaved in two, collapsing to the earth in lifeless halves. How is this possible? Heaven path Payne gasped, terror widening his eyes. The hungry ghost path couldn't absorb Ethan's strike. So it wasn't ninjutsu at all, but sheer, unadulterated swordsmanship? Such a formidable samurai could only come from legends. Tendo Pain, too, misjudged the newcomer, assuming Ethan hailed from the Iron Country or some distant land of warriors. Yet the more haired, the more determined he became. This samurai would kneel before him. Chapter 905, The 6 Paths of Instant Death. "It seems I underestimated you," Tiandao Pain said, his voice low and ice-cold. He extended a hand as though reaching into some unseen reservoir of power. "But the game has only just begun. Jigokudo Pain, show us what you can do." At his command, the face of Jigokudo Pain twisted into an even more unsettling grin. He flicked his wrist, and the air around him quivered as if something were condensing from nothing. Then, as if summoned from another realm, a spectral Yama head, imperceptible to ordinary sight, loomed into existence. Its cavernous maw yawned open, ready to swallow all in its path. Without hesitation, Jigokudo flung the broken remnants of the hungry ghost's corpse into that enormous mouth. The Yama head chewed the fragments a few times, then, impossibly, spat out a fully intact hungry ghost Pain, restored to life. A stunned silence fell over everyone present. Resurrection on this scale defied all logic. "Resurrection?" Virgil murmured with a frown. He realized in that instant that his opponent was far more than a mere enemy. He was wielding powers that completely upended the rules of reality. Tendao Pain sneered and thrust his massive hand toward Virgil. "Feel the pain, Shinra Tensei." Before the words even left his lips, an unprecedented tidal wave of energy erupted from his palm, overwhelming everything in its path. The force defied all natural laws, assaulting not just the body, but existence itself. The air ignited with a deafening roar, and a colossal fan-shaped blast, like the Grim Reaper's scythe, swept outward, mercilessly tearing reality apart. Time itself seemed to freeze. Light lost its flow, each beam solidifying into drifting shards suspended between the shattered heavens and scorched earth. The ground, once a steadfast guardian, quivered like thin winter ice over black water, fracturing with each pulse of repulsion. Cracks spider-webbed outward, deep and jagged, as if nature itself bore open wounds, silently crying out in agony and defiance. Trees, rocks, and even distant buildings were shredded by that force, turning into countless fragments that spun wildly through the air before plummeting to the ruined earth. In an instant, the entire battlefield became a living purgatory, thick with the stench of destruction and despair. Yet amid this overwhelming cataclysm stood a solitary figure, like a lone boat fighting a storm-tossed sea. It was Ethan. His eyes burned with icy resolve, as if he could pierce every illusion and confront the very heart of the devastation. As the repulsive energy of Shinra Tensei swelled to engulf him, Ethan's form blurred, merging seamlessly with the fabric of space itself. In his hand, his blade transformed into a bolt of silver lightning, tearing through the void and carving a slender rift in reality. That rift, like a sliver of dawn in endless night, not only offered him a path to survival, but also shattered the destructive force of Shinra Tensei once and for all. Ethan's once unstoppable repulsive blast wavered at the precise moment it struck the rift in space, and in an instant, an invisible black hole yawned open, swallowing the technique whole. The force collapsed into nothingness and disappeared without a trace. As the shockwave faded, the charged air stilled. Only lingering plumes of smoke and scattered debris remained, silent testaments to the fierceness of the battle. Tiandao Pain's eyes narrowed in surprise. He had never expected Ethan to dispel his Shinra Tensei so effortlessly. "Tianyin," he growled, low and thunderous. He lifted his arms deliberately, as though claiming the entire battlefield under his will. Instantly, an even stronger suction force burst forth, ignoring distance and yanking Ethan toward him like a puppet on a string. Ethan felt the pull seize his limbs, but he showed no fear. Instead, a cold spark of determination lit his gaze. "Gravity manipulation? Fascinating," he murmured. Shifting his weight, he braced himself against the invisible tug. He knew that when an opponent can command both repulsion and attraction at will, mere resistance won't be enough. Now, more than ever, he'd have to outthink Tiandao Pain, not just outfight him. Ethan knew he couldn't afford to hesitate. Every split second counted if he was to land a truly decisive blow. Just as he had anticipated, Tiandao Pain, fresh from unleashing his Tensei suction technique, was already shifting his pupil's power, preparing to follow up with Shinra Tensei's devastating repulsion. His plan was clear: draw Ethan in with one force, then hurl him away with the next, creating a crushing pincer strike. What Tiandao Pain failed to anticipate was Ethan's razor-sharp focus. The instant the enemy's eyes flicked over to his next technique, Ethan spotted the change. In the same heartbeat, he blurred into the air around him, slipping free of the suction field even as he readied his counterattack. "Dimension Slash!" Ethan roared. He poured every ounce of his strength into his sword. The blade quivered, then erupted in a blinding silver flare. In an instant, it tore through the very air, carving out a narrow rift in space itself. Only the opening move in what would be his final, fatal strike. Suddenly, the fissure seemed to come alive, widening in an instant until it exploded into countless shafts of silver light, like a meteor storm ripping through the midnight sky. The beams arced perfectly through the air, not merely cutting flesh and stone, but slicing through reality itself. Each ray carried enough force to rend dimensions and shatter the laws that govern existence. Wherever they passed, hard rock, cold steel, even the bodies of those who dared stand in their path, they vanished as if consumed by an unseen maw. Pain of the Heavenly Path's eyes widened in horror. He could feel the raw terror and despair coursing through every pulse of that power. Desperately, he summoned his chakra, weaving it into a dense defensive barrier. But it was hopeless. Against such overwhelming force, his chakra was nothing more than a single drop in a boundless ocean. The silver light swept forward without hesitation, carving through his shield as though it were mist. "What kind of power is this?" he gasped, his voice trembling with shock and fear. Never in all his battles had he witnessed such devastating might. Ethan shifted tactics, unleashing the universal attraction in an attempt to drag Virgil into striking range. But Virgil had long since seen through the ruse. In a heartbeat, he blurred sideways and slipped effortlessly out of the pull. Chapter 906, The Outer Statue. The shockwave from Ethan's dimensional slash swept over Tiandao Pain like a tidal wave. Pain fought to stay upright, but the force rattled his chest and sent him stumbling backward. His robes were shredded, and blood seeped from fresh wounds, grim proof of how narrowly he'd escaped death's embrace. Yet the assault wasn't finished. No sooner had Pain reined in his stagger than Virgil appeared behind him, silent as a specter. The blade in Virgil's hand was sheathed now, its surface calm, but Pain sensed the barely contained power coiled within. With fluid, almost casual grace, Virgil slid the knife home as if he'd merely completed an unremarkable chore. Pain knew better. A glance downward confirmed his dread. Countless silver arcs had raked across his body, each one a surgical incision that cleaved him from head to toe. In that instant, all 6 of Pain's path bodies, his very lifelines, flickered and died. They collapsed into motionless wreckage, scattered like shattered statues across the battlefield. The battlefield fell deathly silent, as though the very air had hardened around them. Not a single sound broke the stillness. How is that possible? Nagato, Conan, and Uchiha Obito all breathed the same words, each syllable heavy with disbelief. In the fading light of dusk, only the faint after-images of Pain's 6 paths shimmered briefly before dissipating like a half-remembered dream. Nagato's heart thundered in his chest. Tendo Pain, the vessel of his dearest friend Yahiko's will, had been obliterated in an instant by the mysterious swordsman Virgil. What remained was a scatter of lifeless fragments, mixed beyond recognition with the other path bodies. This was more than a defeat. It was a devastating blow to Nagato's very soul. He curled his hands into fists so tight his nails bit into his palms, the searing pain barely registering beneath the fury and shock that roiled inside him. This Virgil, who is he? Obito's deep voice cut through the silence, edged with suspicion. All at once, the 3 stood as one on that blood-soaked plain, searching the gloom for answers that might explain how fate could turn so abruptly against them. Ethan's arrival on the battlefield shattered every expectation. In an instant, his power eclipsed even the fiercest fighters here. Conan watched him intently, her hands clenched in anxious prayer, her concern for Nagato written plainly on her face. Nearby, Virgil's eyes flickered over the glowing progress gauge that hovered before him. A satisfied smile curved his lips as the indicator jumped from 30 to 40%. Just as he'd suspected, Ethan was the key. The secrets buried in this world were far more intricate than anyone had guessed. With each clash, Virgil inched closer to the truth hidden at its core. "This really is where the most vital information lies," he murmured. Then Virgil's tone sharpened as he scanned the battlefield. "Are you in trouble over there, Nagato?" At those words, Nagato shook off his initial shock. He knew all too well that Pain's heavenly power alone would never match Virgil's overwhelming strength. Summoning reserves of will he hadn't realized he possessed, Nagato prepared a desperate gambit, one that might cost him everything. Psychic art, heretic golem. His deep, unwavering shout resonated through the air, and for a moment it felt as if even heaven and earth themselves shifted in response. After the last ripples of warped space finally faded, a colossal statue materialized before them. Its twisted, savage form was wreathed in a dark, pulsing aura. When it opened its cavernous mouth, the roar that followed shook heaven and earth, and the very air around them seemed to congeal. This was the heretic golem, and its arrival upended the entire battlefield. Its mountain-sized bulk thundered with every step, sending tremors through the ground and breathing an almost suffocating sense of dread into all who faced it. Ethan froze in his tracks, heart hammering, and Virgil, who moments before had been pressing the attack, stopped eyed stride, eyes wide in shock. They could both feel the malevolent power radiating from the golem, far stronger than anything they'd ever encountered in this world. Even more disturbing was the source of its strength. There was no tailed beast sealed within this abomination. Instead, it was sustained entirely by Nagato's chakra. The summoning had drained him to the point of collapse, leaving his pale form staggering under the loss of energy. Not even the famed resilience of the Uzumaki clan could restore what had been siphoned away. Konan stood by Nagato's side, her usual calm shattered. She watched in mounting alarm as the golem loomed over them all, realizing with a jolt of fear that saving him, let alone defeating this monstrosity, would be more difficult than any battle they had ever faced. Ethan understood all too well the power of the heretic demon form, and he knew how steadfast and resolute Nagato was in moments like this. What tormented him most, however, was the toll it would take on her body, the staggeringly vast chakra required to host an external demon. Now, as he watched Nagato's cheeks drain of color, his heart twisted with helpless dread. Even members of the Uzumaki clan, famed for their prodigious life force and chakra reserves, could buckle under such bottomless demands, and Nagato was no exception. "Nagato." Ethan's voice caught, and he could do nothing more than let out a helpless sigh. Nagato offered him a faint, reassuring smile, a blend of unwavering determination and quiet relief. "Don't worry, Ethan. I'm not the child I once was. I know exactly how to control this demon's power." With that, the air around her crackled. Chakra rippled outward like a river running backward against its current, surging until the very ground seemed to vibrate. Nagato closed her eyes and wove her fingers into a complex seal. In that moment, every cell in her body screamed with primal energy, poised on the edge of a vast, dangerous transformation. Ethan's voice dropped to a low chant, and an unprecedented surge of chakra burst from his body like a raging tempest. It swept across the clearing and enveloped the long-dormant Outer Path demon statue in an instant. The ancient construct shuddered, as if stirred from a 1,000-year slumber, then let out a deafening roar, raw with fury and anguish, answering Ethan's summons and pouring out centuries of loneliness and regret. He remembered all too well the first time he had ever called forth that statue, when Yahiko fell. The backlash had nearly killed him, draining his life force until he was nothing but skin and bone. It had taken years of struggle before he could even stand again. Now, thunderous roars shook the earth as the statue bowed its head in a wild, unhinged cry. From its cavernous maw, a colossal dragon of pure chakra materialized, twisting and spiraling through the air. Wherever the dragon swept, the very air seemed to tear apart. These chakra dragons were weapons of unspeakable power. Not only could they obliterate their targets, but they could devour every last drop of chakra in their path. Any living creature that comes into contact with them will have its chakra drained, plunging it into a life-threatening crisis. Chapter 907, The True Demon, Topple the Heretic's Demon Idol. Ethan adjusted his stance, planting his feet firmly as he summoned every ounce of his strength into the Yama sword. Instantly, the blade flared with a brilliant blue light, the unmistakable sign that his power had reached its absolute limit. With a sharp hiss, he unleashed his signature technique, the dimensional slash. In that instant, time itself seemed to slow. Every eye fixed on the translucent rift that cleaved the air like thin ice. It widened in the blink of an eye, severing space as though it were fragile glass and pouring forth a cataclysmic force that rattled the earth. Even so, the heretic demon barely flinched. Its colossal frame bore only a shallow gouge, no deeper than a mere scratch on ancient stone, a trivial mark on its vast, impenetrable hide. In the face of Ethan's world-shaking strike, the damage was almost negligible. Ethan's jaw tightened, and a rare frown creased his brow. He knew the dimensional slash's devastating potential, and yet this creature had shrugged it off as if it were nothing more than a light breeze. "What kind of monster?" he murmured under his breath. Ethan's blade didn't simply sever flesh, it tore through the very fabric of space itself, striking at the material plane's foundation. He had expected the heretic demon's body to shatter under such an attack. Instead, the giant golem before him barely flinched. Where he'd hoped to carve a massive gash, there lay only a shallow nick in its outer hide, like cutting a few strands of hair from a titan. Against a creature born of the 10 tails, a being that traverses dimensions at will, such damage was insignificant. The golem's resilience forced Ethan to reconsider his tactics. This wasn't an ordinary demon. Its defenses exceeded every rule he knew. A single sliver of spatial energy had failed to phase it. If space itself could be wounded so easily, the 10 tails would never have reached this world unimpeded. "Nagato, stop!" Black Zetsu's voice trembled with urgency. "You're overexerting the heretic golem's power. It's consuming your life force." Nagato paid no heed, pressing her hands deeper into the golem's core. From the sidelines, Black Zetsu paced anxiously. He understood all too well how vital the heretic golem was to Otsutsuki Kaguya's revival. If Nagato drained herself dry now, their entire resurrection plan would unravel before it even began. If the heretic golem suffers serious damage, the entire resurrection ceremony will be jeopardized. And worse yet, it could set off a chain of unpredictable calamities. Black Zetsu's voice crackled urgently in Nagato's mind, begging him to desist from committing the golem to any more pointless assaults. "Silence, Black Zetsu!" Nagato snarled. With a flick of his will, he drove the abomination forward once more. Instantly, the heretical demon responded. It unleashed a thunderous roar as the spiny protrusions along its back began to spin like storm turbines, calling down a storm of violent lightning. Each bolt tore through the air like an enraged dragon, capable of leveling mountains in a single strike, let alone felling one lone warrior. Ethan moved as though the lightning itself guided him. He wove through each crackling surge with millisecond precision, his footwork as fluid and graceful as a dance, yet every step was honed to deadly intent. Calm determination shone in his eyes, a blend of anticipation for the trial ahead and respect for the unknown power he faced. In his hand, the Yan demon sword seemed to awaken. A pale blue glow rippled along the blade's edge, chilling the very air around him with a heart-stopping cold. "Since conventional methods can't breach your core, I'll call on this abyssal power and watch you fall," Virgil vowed inwardly. He gathered his resolve, and a torrential surge of magic burst from him, enveloping his body in a crackling aura. This was no mere ninjutsu. It was the very force of the devil, born of his relentless pursuit of strength and self-transcendence. Under the stunned stares of onlookers, Virgil began to transform. His muscles swelled, and beneath his skin, inky black scales materialized, each one glinting with an inner glow beneath the deep blue magic that suffused him. From his back sprouted 2 pairs of massive dragon wings, not just for flight, but as living emblems of his newfound might. At each elbow, twin blades of pure blue flames formed, razor-sharp and humming with spatial energy. With a single strike, these fiery knives could rend both enemy and environment alike. He swept the long blade in a deliberate arc, and the faint crackle of ruptured space echoed through the air, an effect only someone who truly commands dimensional power could produce. From his back, a pitch-black tail unfurled like a living shadow, its barbed tip gleaming with lethal cold as it could pierce any defense. But the most startling transformation was on Virgil's forehead. Two hollow horns sprouted from the center, wreathed in blazing azure flames, the unmistakable mark of demonic power. His features grew savage, and his eyes blazed with an immortal fervor and wild ecstasy, the very embodiment of his boundless lust for battle. With Virgil's true devil form fully revealed, the entire battlefield quivered under a force unlike any before. The air itself grew heavy, charged with a dark, awe-inspiring presence. Even the heretic golem's thunderous roar seemed muted in response. Though its lightning strikes remained fierce, they now felt feeble against the fathomless depths of Virgil's sea-blue magic. Ethan hovered in midair above the towering Outer Path demon statue, dark blue mana swirling around him like living shadow. Each ribbon of power crackled with world-shattering potential. In his hands, the Yama blade pulsed with its own eerie light, resonating in perfect harmony with the ambient magic. Ethan's eyes gleamed as he raised the weapon. "Now, let me show you what real power is," he declared. Hidden in the darkness, Uchiha Obito, Nagato, and the ever-watchful Black Zetsu stared in stunned silence. None of them had ever encountered a being like Ethan, and they certainly hadn't expected anyone to dare challenge the Outer Path demon statue so brazenly. Fear and confusion warred in their hearts, but above all, there was awe at the unknown might before them. Obito's Sharingan spun rapidly, desperate to record and analyze every move, yet even its kaleidoscopic vision fell short of unraveling Ethan's true demon form. Then, in the blink of an eye, Ethan lunged forward, his speed so immense it seemed to fracture time itself, and landed directly before the statue's massive feet, Yama blade gleaming in readiness. Ethan's blue flame longsword whistled through the air, its shrill cry echoing across the chamber as the blade drove straight into the heart of the Outer Path demon statue. Though the golem's power was notorious, it cracked and crumbled almost instantly before Ethan's overwhelming might. He swept out a second blade of cerulean fire, scoring 2 deep gashes along the creature's stony surface. Pure blue magic poured into the wounds like a torrential flood, clashing violently with the golem's own chakra and sending shockwaves rippling through its hulking form. Chapter 908, Epic Enhancement of Nagato. The heretic demon's roar rolled across the desolate battlefield like a thunderclap of despair and rage, echoing from some ancient abyss. Its colossal form writhed in agony, every inch of its obsidian hide wreathed in searing flame. Never before had it taken such a grievous wound. Virgil, feared throughout the realms for his merciless strikes, had brought his blade down on the demon's outer shell with unbelievable force. A single slash carved a jagged crack through the statue-like armor, nearly cleaving it in 4, and black ichor gushed out like a fountain, staining the earth crimson. The shockwave rippled through the air, leaving every onlooker frozen in stunned silence. From the shadows, Haijue, the mastermind behind the conspiracy, felt panic surge through him. The heretic golem was central to their plan. Without it, everything teetered on the brink of collapse. He could not afford any delay. "Nagato, we have to move now!" he cried, his voice quavering with desperation. But Nagato was already in the throes of the backlash from the golem's injury. Invisible chains seemed to constrict his very soul, pulling at his life force with every weakening pulse. He forced himself to steady his breath, determined to turn this crisis into the ultimate enhancement. End of chapter. Ethan's body was growing thin, but his eyes blazed with unyielding resolve. He snorted softly and answered Black Zetsu's summons. He'd already made up his mind. The heretic golem's own regeneration could no longer stem the tide of crisis. He would have to intervene directly to turn the battle around. "White Zetsu," Ethan said. "It's time." A steely determination edged Black Zetsu's voice as he laid out the plan. Ethan would possess White Zetsu. It was fraught with risk, but also the quickest, most potent solution. White Zetsu's legendary vitality and regenerative power were exactly the reserves Ethan needed right now. Without hesitation, time was slipping away. Ethan recalled the heretic demon. The towering, corrupted form shimmered into view under his command, settling to the ground with a low rumble. Even as its bulk stilled, Ethan sensed the creature's weakness and unease through their bond. He met Black Zetsu's gaze and gave a firm nod. Almost instantly, White Zetsu, the endlessly mutating creature, alive with tenacious energy, answered the call. Tendrils of living matter streamed toward Ethan and began to climb over him, merging with his form in a surge of raw power. From the sidelines, Xiaonan watched, heart-pounding. The stakes had never been higher, and now, everything hinged on Ethan's next move. She knew all too well what White Zetsu's takeover would mean. Ethan's very life and death would slip beyond her control. If he lost himself in the fusion, he'd become nothing more than Black Zetsu's puppet. And yet, there was nothing she could do now but pray. Ethan's body began to merge with White Zetsu's in a grotesque, almost liquid dance. Flesh and tendrils intertwined with a sizzling hiss, each pulse sending green smoke curling into the air. It was a brutal alchemy, two utterly different life forces forced into one, and in that violent synthesis, Ethan's own vitality was reborn. "Hey, you actually stole my body outright." White Zetsu's voice slurred through the haze, its resentment dripping from every syllable. But Ethan proved harder to control than Black Zetsu had bargained for. Calling on the unique power of the Samsara Eye, he erected an unbreakable mental barrier, locking White Zetsu's consciousness away in a dark corner of his mind. The battle was silent, but the outcome rang clear. Ethan emerged the dominant will. Ethan's control extended far beyond the physical. It reached into the recesses of the mind. In that moment, he truly became master of two lives, wary of Baizetsu's power and determined to seize the upper hand. He knew he had to dominate her at once. Simultaneously, he drove his Samsara Eye technique to new heights, silently absorbing the external energy as though conducting a private Thames ritual. With every inhalation, his strength swelled. With every heartbeat, he pushed the boundaries of his own existence. As the energies intertwined, Ethan felt subtle but profound changes coursing through his body. Baizetsu's nearly infinite vitality washed over him like life-giving rain, replenishing the reserves that long campaigns and relentless combat had drained. The wounds branded by the detonative talisman closed at an astonishing rate, and the raw power surging beneath his skin began reshaping him into something reborn. His complexion flushed back to health, and his eyes darkened with newfound depth and intensity. Though he could hear Baizetsu's angry protests in the back of his mind, he paid them no heed. He was utterly consumed by the unprecedented force now raging within him. Ethan drew a steadying breath and whispered, "What is this? What does it feel like to be reborn?" Ethan murmured, testing the strength in his limbs. A rush of power and possibility pulsed through him as he stood and clenched his fists. "Ethan, you're up?" Xiaonan's voice brimmed with astonishment. "Are you really all right?" she added, concern edging her tone. He offered her a steady, determined smile. "Don't worry, Xiaonan. I've never been stronger. With Baijue's power at my command, I'll protect this world and forge a lasting peace." He turned to Obito and Black Zetsu. "From this moment on, Baijue belongs to me, and this vessel suits me perfectly." Obito nodded coolly, as if Baijue's absence were merely a temporary snag. "Fine, but what about Virgil? We can't afford any delays in our plan." At that, Ethan's expression faltered. He lowered his gaze, scrutinizing his new body. Surprise, and something deeper, a flicker of confusion, crossed his features. Ethan's fingers drifted across his arm as if he were waking up from a dream. "Hey, this is my body," he murmured in astonishment. The head of White Zetsu thrashed beside him, shouting incoherently, but Ethan barely registered it. Instead, he focused on the sudden surge of power and awareness flooding his veins. This wasn't merely a life force boost. White Zetsu's vitality acted like a catalyst, unlocking the untapped potential hidden within Ethan's cells. A roaring energy raced through his limbs, restoring every ounce of strength his body had lost to exhaustion. Chakra swelled in his core, straining against its restraints as if eager to break free. Ethan drew in a steadying breath and began to refine the torrent of power. To his surprise, his control flourished at lightning speed, several times faster than before. He paused, curiosity flaring. "What are these cells?" With the Samsara Eye's special power, Ethan temporarily subdued White Zetsu's will. Seizing the moment, he concentrated on the strange life energy coursing through the Zetsu's form. Beneath its simple veneer lay an extraordinary cellular architecture, far more intricate than anything he'd encountered. And as he peered deeper, Ethan realized he was on the verge of understanding the very secret of his newfound strength. These cells don't just repair damage at remarkable speed. Under the right conditions, they can also unlock astonishing potential. Chapter 909, Ethan's eyes snapped open. "You should have told me sooner," he exclaimed, his heart pounding with excitement. He could feel a raging torrent of energy waiting to be harnessed, yet he knew he had to guide it carefully if he wanted it to fuse with his own chakra. Steeling himself, Ethan reached out with his will, weaving the foreign power into his being. At once, a force more intense than anything he had ever experienced swept through him. His Rinnegan flared to new heights of potency, and he could sense his entire body reshaping itself from the inside out, growing stronger with every heartbeat. He let out a low murmur of awe as an exhilarating warmth traveled along his veins. Baijue's essence, whatever strange restorative power it possessed, had not merely healed him. It had unlocked a brand new source of strength, like waking a slumbering dragon deep within his core. Every nerve ending tingled. Every bone felt remolded by that raw, limitless energy. Ethan's irises, already as fathomless as the midnight sky, now danced with brilliant light, a living testament to the ultimate evolution of his ocular power. He raised a hand to his face, feeling the surge of power thrumming at his fingertips. This power," he whispered, disbelief lacing his tone. "It makes me stronger than ever, stronger even than the bounds of the Rinnegan itself." Slowly, he blinked, and in that single charged moment, his new eyes opened to see a world transformed. Ethan's eyes shone with more than just wonder. They held anticipation and resolve for the changes he was about to bring. The rain-soaked village of Am, long shrouded in cloud and mist, began to stir under his will. He lifted a hand, fingertips brushing the damp air. As if obeying a silent command, the heavy storm clouds slowly thinned, revealing a clear blue sky and golden sunlight. A single beam broke through, dancing across the wet streets and filling the village with a warmth and hope it hadn't felt in years. Ethan smiled, a calm, knowing curve of his lips that spoke of defying nature itself with nothing more than his power. "Even the weather must answer to me," he murmured. Then, in an instant, his form elongated into a streak of light and shot skyward. He moved so swiftly, it seemed he slipped beyond the bounds of time and space. From that lofty vantage, he looked down on Yuan village, its lanes and rooftops sharpening into view. A rush of emotion swelled in his chest. This was not only where he stood, but where his new chapter truly began. Ethan's gaze fixed on a distant point, his destination, Virgil's domain. A sneer curved his lips as he anticipated a head-on clash with this formidable foe, eager to test his newfound strength. "Virgil," he called out, his voice echoing with unyielding authority, "your choices today will seal your fate." High above, Virgil stood at the summit of his territory, sensing Ethan's approach like the swell of a great tide. A playful smile quirked at his lips. Challengers of true resolve and power held a special appeal for him, worthy adversaries who might draw out his hidden potential, even if, in the end, they were no match for absolute might. "Please," Virgil replied smoothly, his tone laced with amusement, "once you fully grasp the greatness of God, you wouldn't speak so boldly." Ethan arched an eyebrow, disdain flashing in his eyes. "The power of God?" he repeated, voice edged with challenge. "In this world, only power is truth. If you so-called God can't show me its might with my own eyes, then you're nothing but an illusion." Ethan ignored Virgil's taunt. He wove his fingers into ancient seals as a titanic force roiled within him, coalescing into a single devastating wave. Then, with a roar, that energy burst free, an invisible shockwave that radiated from Ethan like a wild stallion breaking its leash. Wherever it passed, space itself buckled and reality crumbled into nothingness. "Super Shinra Tenjeng," he bellowed, his voice low and unbreakable. Suddenly, Ethan's eyes snapped open, pupils blazing with searing light, the pure sense of power itself, where despair and hope collided. In that moment, he became a living conduit between heaven and earth, channeling world-shattering energy through his very being. The air around him quivered, as if existence itself strained at the boundaries, caught between the tangible and the impossible. A suffocating weight pressed down on the world, and even the distant clouds were drawn into a vast, churning vortex, as if the very sky threatened to rent itself apart. Then, from the epicenter where Nagato stood, an overwhelming repulsive force radiated outward like a colossal tsunami. This was no ordinary blast of energy. It carried with it Nagato's indictment of all worldly injustices and his longing for universal peace. Wherever the wave swept, mountains shattered, rivers carved new paths, and solid rock was pulverized into dust. In that instant, reality itself seemed to be remade. Is that the full extent of your power? Virgil's voice cut through the thunderous tumult, cool contempt edged with a grudging admiration. Your so-called god turns out to be nothing more than a puppet trained for wide-scale devastation. Nagato's features contorted with rage. Even the might of Super Shinra Tenjang had failed to faze Virgil, and now this scorn stung deeper than any weapon. His face drained of color, knuckles whitening as he gripped his armaments, seething at the challenge laid before him. Ethan didn't simply evade Nagato's Super Shinra Tensei by flying or accelerating. He vanished from its repulsive force by tapping into a rare spatial technique, slipping just beyond its reach. Before Nagato could even register the shift, Ethan reappeared behind him, silent as a specter. Nagato's eyes went wide. He activated Shirado no Jutsu, sprouting 2 extra arms to seize Ethan, but Ethan drew the Yama sword and with cold efficiency chopped the new limbs away. He followed the blade's edge along the stark line separating Nagato's pale outer form from his flesh beneath, and sliced clean through the torso. White Zetsu, which had cocooned Nagato's lower half, found only empty air where its prey once was. Nagato let out a strangled groan as Zetsu surged forward to remask him, only to be cleaved in half by Ethan's next strike. Even cells infused with the divine tree could not withstand the wrath of the Yama sword. Nagato, bleeding and weakened, propped himself on one arm. What are you planning? He managed. Ethan sheathed his blade, his gaze unblinking. Tell me everything. Nagato stared at him, confusion flickering across his face. Everything. Ethan nodded once, unwavering. Every secret you've hidden, now. It looks like the chapter itself didn't come through, aside from the single line, yes, everything you know. Could you please paste the full chapter you'd like me to revise? Once I have the complete text, I'll rewrite it into coherent, idiomatic English, rename Luther to Ethan, and ensure he's consistently portrayed as male. Chapter 9-10. Nagato could feel it. Shiro had grown stronger. Even though Virgil had laid out his purpose in no uncertain terms, Nagato refused to listen. His arrogance had swelled to divine proportions, and after fusing with White Zetsu, his power had only increased. Why would he answer Virgil's questions and give his enemy the chance to grow even stronger? But then Virgil had struck, and Nagato tasted defeat for the first time. Worse still, he'd felt a hollow, unfamiliar fear, not of death but of doubt. Was he really as godlike as he believed? At that moment, Conan's voice cut through the turmoil. In an instant, her body dissolved into countless sheets of paper, drifting through the air to reassemble around Nagato. Her sudden appearance made his anger flare and deepened his worry. This adversary was overwhelming. Conan had no business stepping into the fray. "Conan, stay back," he hissed. "This is too dangerous." His voice shook. He was already on the edge. If she charged in recklessly, she'd only put herself in greater peril. Yet even as he spoke, an undeniable fear gnawed at him. Could he truly keep her safe? Ethan hesitated, unsure he could guarantee Xiaonan's safety while in Virgil's presence. Virgil, however, didn't seem to mind. With a dismissive lift of his chin, he said, "Don't worry, your lives don't interest me. I only want what I came for. I'm searching for the truth behind this world." Virgil never wasted effort on people who didn't stand in his way. He only killed those who blocked him. His next words were cold and deliberate. The Akatsuki exists to bring real peace to a world plagued by suffering. Nagato's voice quivered, but he held his ground. By collecting the tailed beasts, we plan to forge a weapon so powerful that no major nation will dare wage war again. Endless bloodshed will become a thing of the past. Nagato saw no reason to conceal their goal from Virgil, so he laid it all out. Out of sight, Uchiha Obito clenched his fists, fury and frustration twisting his features. He couldn't believe an outsider could so easily outmaneuver him. Black Zetsu, however, studied Virgil with a mixture of wariness and fascination. He had existed through countless eras, witnessed untold wonders, and yet he had never encountered a being as inscrutable and unpredictable as Virgil. "What do we do?" Black Zetsu's dark voice trembled with tension as he turned to Uchiha Obito. Virgil's power had shattered every expectation. He'd even bested Nagato, fused with White Zetsu. Obito paused, determination flaring in his crimson eyes. We can't just sit here and wait for him to strike, he said quietly. Virgil's strength surpasses anything we've faced, but we have our own assets. Every member of the Akatsuki brings a unique talent to the table. If we pool our abilities, we might find a way to take him down. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched on his face. Alone, I wouldn't last a second against Virgil, and Nagato couldn't either. His space-time ninjutsu is too overwhelming. If I leap out recklessly, he'll tear me apart in an instant. Black Zetsu's expression darkened. Not even he knew where Virgil had come from. He'd roamed the ninja world longer than any living being, far longer than even the Sage of Six Paths, and in his quest to resurrect his mother, he'd orchestrated scheme after scheme across countless lands. Yet this opponent remained an enigma. Silence fell between them as they weighed their slim chances. The Akatsuki had brought down powerful foes before, but Virgil's arrival threatened to shatter everything they'd built. Now more than ever, they would need to rely on each other and strike with perfect coordination if they hoped to survive. Ethan had spent decades manipulating the chakra reincarnations of the Sage of Six Paths' two sons in his relentless pursuit of the fabled Samsara Eye. In all his long years, amidst countless powerful shinobi and intricate conspiracies, he had never once encountered anyone like Virgil. This newcomer didn't seem to belong to the ninja world at all. He was as if on from some other reality. Virgil stood before Nagato in perfect silence while the old Akatsuki leader detailed his organization's terror plot. The moment Nagato finished, Virgil's inner progress bar remained unmoved, frozen, as though nothing had registered. "Continue," Virgil said at last. Nagato blinked. He just laid out everything, from the puppeteering of nations to the resurrection of ancient warlords. "That's it," he stammered. "Everything I know." Virgil frowned, a hint of impatience in his voice. Yes. Nagato's heart thudded. Would Virgil, denied the prize he sought, unleash his wrath on the Akatsuki? But instead of attacking, Virgil's form began to dissolve, as though melting into the very air. Within moments he was gone. In the eerie quiet that followed, only Nagato and Konan remained in the clearing, while unseen, Obito and Kuro watched from the shadows. They exchanged uneasy glances, each wondering what Virgil's arrival and abrupt departure would mean for the future of their world. Ethan materialized like a wraith in the darkness, slipping through the fabric of space to stand silently before Uchiha Obito and Black Zetsu. His arrival pressed down on them so heavily that the very atmosphere seemed to congeal. He studied them both, his gaze finally settling on Black Zetsu, whose aura radiated an uncanny intensity. "What ties do you have to the Akatsuki, and why are you hiding here?" Ethan asked, his voice calm but inexorable. Black Zetsu felt Ethan's scrutiny keenly. Even Uchiha Obito's usual composure faltered under that unblinking stare, as if an invisible gauge was rising in tandem with Ethan's suspicion. Neither of them fully understood that silent measure, but each sensed its import. Obito swallowed hard. "Ethan, we didn't mean to deceive you. It's just, the Akatsuki's plans are so elaborate and so dangerous that if any of it leaked, the entire ninja world could descend into chaos." His voice trembled as he spoke, equal parts plea and distraction. Shielding Black Zetsu with his body, Obito glanced around for any chance to slip away while trying to placate Ethan's relentless intensity. Black Zetsu glared at Uchiha Obito, who shrank back under the serpent's contempt. "My goal isn't to see your plan succeed," Black Zetsu hissed. "It's to unearth the truth behind it." "Then speak now," Virgil demanded bluntly, "or die." Obito's voice rumbled low, carrying the weight of forbidden knowledge. "The truth I bear may prove too much for this world," he warned. Still seeing no way out, he took a steadying breath. "The Akatsuki is more than a criminal syndicate. Its members are defectors from every major ninja village, bound together by one grand ambition, to gather all 9-tailed beasts." He paused, eyes flicking to Black Zetsu before returning to Virgil. "Once they've collected every beast, they plan to enact the Moon's Eye Project. By projecting an infinite Tsukuyomi across the globe, they would trap every living soul in a shared illusion, a dreamscape of perfect peace. They believe that only by erasing all pain, conflict, and free will can true harmony be achieved." Virgil's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, the torchlight casting harsh shadows across his face. "A peace built on lies is no peace at all," he said coldly. He fixed Obito with an unflinching stare, silently demanding more, especially about the role Black Zetsu might play in such a scheme. Chapter 911 Dimensional Slashing Technique to Block Mayflies. Of course Black Zetsu wouldn't betray its true purpose, Obito said without hesitation, so tell me more about it. Virgil watched the progress bar inch forward as Obito spoke. Drawing a slow, steady breath, Obito continued. Black Zetsu is not merely one more pawn in this game. It's one of the original architects of every scheme we've encountered. In fact, you could call it the oldest conspirator of all. It isn't just a creature. It's the living embodiment of Madara Uchiha's will, a presence that transcends life and death. Before he died, Madara poured his remaining chakra and intent into Black Zetsu, tasking it with completing his unfinished work, resurrecting himself, and realizing his vision of peace through the Eye of the Moon project. Obito fell silent, suddenly aware he might have revealed far more than he intended. He flicked a nervous glance at Black Zetsu, silently begging for a denial or explanation, but the entity remained perfectly still, its alien features as unreadable as ever. Virgil, meanwhile, fixed his gaze squarely on Black Zetsu, desperate for the answers the creature refused to give. Ethan felt a surge of power humming beneath his skin, proof that this world held secrets beyond imagination. With each subtle rise of the glowing progress bar, he grew more convinced that Black Zetsu was the key to unlocking every mystery here. Black Zetsu, Virgil's voice cut through the charged air, icy and unyielding. Tell us more. What is your true nature? Your purpose? How are you bound to this world? The shadow before them shifted like living ink, at last responding in a soft, unsettling whisper. Virgil, you understand only a fraction of me. Yes, I embody Madara Uchiha's will, but my being stretches far beyond a single man's legacy. I have witnessed countless eras, seen the rise and fall of the shinobi world over and over. My aim is not merely to resurrect Madara. I seek a higher reality that transcends time, race, and every boundary you can imagine. Yet that truth, I cannot reveal it to you now. Obito Uchiha watched Black Zetsu with narrowed eyes. The creature's words reeked of artful deception, precisely the gambit to baffle Virgil. The audacity made Obito's blood boil, but he kept his silence. If Zetsu could mislead Virgil, all the better for their plans. As for the notion that Zetsu might be fooling himself, Obito dismissed it outright. After all, they were all sailing the same ship. Everyone harbored their own ambitions, but their goals converged on a single outcome: become the Ten Tails Jinchuriki and cast the infinite Tsukuyomi. Virgil sneered. Black Zetsu remained motionless, then, without warning, activated the mayfly technique. Instantly, his form melted into the earth and surrounding foliage, allowing him to spring through the organic network of roots and subterranean water channels. In that moment, all breath and trace of his chakra vanished. Black Zetsu, Obito Uchiha hissed, astonished. He had never imagined Zetsu would dare flee before Virgil. If Zetsu slipped away, what chance did Obito have of containing him? Virgil's lip curled in contempt. Trying to run? In a heartbeat, he summoned his Yama blade and swung. The night air screamed as the blade tore through space itself, shattering the delicate balance of time and dimension in its wake. Ethan moved with fluid precision, every subtle turn honed by countless repetitions and aligned with the universe's hidden laws. The tip of his Yama blade traced an almost imperceptible arc through the void, an incredible speed no mortal eye could follow, wielding a dance that bent both time and space. In the darkness, an azure crescent blossomed like the purest sapphire harvested from the ocean's depths, suffusing the night with its oppressive brilliance. This was no ordinary glow, but a distilled surge of power. As Ethan's blade sliced through the air, an invisible field of resistance erupted, not from any physical barrier, but from space itself recoiling at the imminent change. The surrounding void warped in strange, indescribable ways, stirring even the tiniest specks of dust into quivering submission, as if the entire world were bowing to the strike and paving its own path. Where that resistance met Ethan's dimensional slash, a stunning blue aurora ignited, a radiant testament to the force he commanded. It wasn't merely a shaft of light, but a strange phenomenon born the moment space itself was cleaved open, like a cluster of stars exploding in the heart of the universe, tearing the endless darkness in two, and laying bare a power both beautiful and terrifying. That shimmering rift sliced through the void, illuminating the path where Black Zetsu had tried to flee, and sealing his fate by leaving him nowhere to hide. At the core of Virgil's dimensional slash lay his absolute dominion over space. Each strike was more than a simple physical cut. It was a precise reweaving of the fabric of reality. Under his blade, whether solid metal, rushing air, or the invisible expanse itself, all resistance collapsed. Everything could only be torn apart and reshaped to his will. This wasn't just another contest of strength, it was a direct assault on existence itself. When Virgil unleashed the full force of his blade, a tremendous shockwave rippled outward from him. It wasn't merely a gust of wind, but raw, unleashed energy, unleashed by the very restructuring of space. In an instant, that wave of power swept away everything in its vicinity. Trees tore from their roots as massive swaths of earth and rock soared into the air. It was as though nature itself quivered before the force of this man. Within a 1-kilometer radius, the ground and nearby mountains had split and crumbled, not from any ordinary quake, but from the rift left by Ethan's dimension slash. Like a master painter's brushstroke, his blade had carved the land in two, unleashing a destructive elegance all its own. The once solid peaks and steadfast ridges lay shattered, as fragile as toys under Ethan's hand. When the final echoes of his strike faded, an eerie stillness settled over the scarred landscape. But beneath that silence roiled a deeper terror and awe. Slowly, Ethan sheathed his blade. The sharp click of metal closing was the only announcement he needed to signal the battle's end. Hidden in the fractured earth, Black Zetsu, who had relied on his mayfly technique to meld with the soil, now seemed utterly powerless. He had hoped to vanish beneath the surface and escape under nature's cover, but against a strike that tore through dimensions, all his efforts were empty. He remained motionless, swallowed by despair and the crushing realization of his own helplessness. After witnessing everything unfold, Ethan felt a rush of conflicting emotions, shock, awe, and even a strange sense of relief. He was grateful the sword hadn't been aimed at him, and he couldn't help but thrill at being there in person to watch such a breathtaking battle. Chapter 912, Black Zetsu's Deception. Black Zetsu studied the shattered mountainside and the fractured caverns beneath it. Virgil was proving far more formidable than the average shinobi. He leaned on his staff and warned quietly, "You can keep running, but I can't guarantee my next strike won't kill you." Virgil offered him a calm, almost amused smile. "You misunderstand me, Lord Virgil. I merely wish to continue our conversation in a more suitable location." Relief flickered across Zetsu's masked face. "Very well. Lead the way." Virgil inclined his head without a hint of irritation. Why waste anger on a weaker opponent when he could simply be dispatched? Now that Zetsu understood the mayfly technique could not buy him freedom, he had ceased all resistance. Still, he worried that revealing too much might tip off Uchiha Obito. As they walked, Zetsu's mind churned with new schemes to deceive. Unbeknownst to him, Uchiha Obito remained motionless at the cliff's edge. Contrary to Zetsu's fears, Obito did not suspect that Black Zetsu was hiding anything. After all, he already knew the full scope of the Eye of the Moon plan and the infinite Tsukuyomi, and exactly when to bring its power to bear. Black Zetsu was no longer of any use to him. With Virgil's power at his side, Obito could have eradicated the clone with a mere gesture, and he didn't even need to strike. Obito's thoughts were fixed elsewhere now, on Nagato's Rinnegan. "Black Zetsu," he murmured, glancing in the direction the white figure had retreated. Without another word, he activated Kamui and slipped away, disappearing before Virgil could vent his frustration at being denied what he wanted. Obito didn't care if Virgil's anger spilled over onto innocent bystanders. Better to put some distance between them now. Black Zetsu guided Virgil to the Valley of the End, but when the pair reached the legendary battlefield, they found no trace of Obito. The black and white clone paused, frowning as he considered Obito's escape. Stupid, he thought, but given the limits of Obito's insight and intellect, perhaps it wasn't surprising. Black Zetsu clenched his fists in frustration and relief. "Let's move on," Virgil said, standing atop the fallen statue of Hashirama Senju, surveying the vast river gorge below. His voice carried easily in the still air. Black Zetsu climbed onto the broken monument of Madara Uchiha. A palpable gloom settled over the valley, as if even the air mourned the memory of that final, fateful battle. The two figures stood in silence, the statues of the ancient rivals looming over them, and the wind whispering through the crimson leaves. Ethan stood before Virgil, acutely aware that any falsehood would be exposed in an instant. But to conceal his true objective, the resurrection of Kaguya Otsutsuki, he had to weave a careful web of lies. Virgil, Ethan began, his voice measured, the Moon Eye Project isn't merely a modern experiment, it's the latest chapter in an age-old Otsutsuki prophecy. At his side, Black Zetsu's tone dropped into a low, magnetic whisper, adding an air of gravitas. What we call the Samsara Eye, the fusion of the Rinnegan and Sharingan, is an even deeper secret of our clan. It draws upon an intimate mastery of life and death and channels immense spiritual force. Only someone with extraordinary strength who has truly perfected these arts can unlock its ultimate power and perform the infinite moon reflection. Zetsu's eyes gleamed. Legend holds that when the two mightiest eyes achieve perfect union, they can tear open the gateway to the divine realm and awaken our sleeping progenitor, Princess Kaguya Otsutsuki. And Lord Madara is the only one strong enough to wield such power. And Lord Madara is the linchpin of this entire prophecy. Virgil's eyes narrowed, flickering like twin torches in the dim light, as though he could see right through Black Zetsu's disguise into the very core of his being. Yet his face remained impassive, cold, detached, revealing no hint of surprise or curiosity. "Continue," he commanded. Black Zetsu's tendrils quivered in the tense silence. He drew a breath and pressed on. Madara Uchiha is more than just the mightiest of his clan. He craves absolute power, and with it, total dominion over the world. He believes that by activating the infinite Tsukuyomi, he can forge a flawless realm free of suffering and conflict. To achieve this, he must first gather the chakra of the nine-tailed beasts, fuse them into the 10 tails, and then unleash the moon's eye to fulfill his grand design. Zetsu paused deliberately, searching Virgil's expression for any sign of shock or doubt. But Virgil's features remained as inscrutable as ever, his cool gaze indifferent, as if he already knew every detail or considered it beneath his concern. A cold dread curled through Black Zetsu's core. He forced himself to continue, determined not to display a single crack in his composure. However, there is an even deeper secret. Black Zetsu drew a slow, deliberate breath before continuing. Otsutsuki Kaguya isn't merely the progenitor of chakra. She's a god from another world, dispatched here to reshape this one. But her own clan betrayed her, and they sealed her away. The Moon Eye Project? It's nothing more than the extension of Kaguya's will, designed to bring her back so she can finish what she started. A flicker of interest lit Virgil's eyes before his expression returned to its usual calm. You're saying that reviving Kaguya would allow her to pursue her business, then? His voice carried a teasing note, as though he were inspecting an intriguing new toy. Black Zetsu nodded, inwardly pleased that Virgil was hooked. Precisely, Lord Virgil. Kaguya's power is beyond anything anyone in this world can imagine. Her resurrection would shatter every boundary we know, unleashing changes of unprecedented scale. For the shinobi world, and for warriors of your caliber, it represents the ultimate opportunity. Virgil chuckled low and cold, the sound equally laced with irony and disdain. Opportunity, yes, but for me it's the thrill of the process that truly matters. Reviving an ancient god just to indulge her selfish whims? Frankly, that's tedious. Black Zetsu's heart constricted. He knew his lie was wearing thin on Virgil's patience, yet he had no other choice but to press on. My Lord Virgil, he began, voice steady despite his fear, you may not see the purpose now, but when you witness Kaguya's power for yourself, feel the presence that transcends all reality, you'll understand. Virgil said nothing. He turned slowly, his gaze lingering on the distant mountain peaks as though searching for an answer. After a long moment, he pivoted back, eyes cold and razor-sharp. Black Zetsu, he said, voice low and measured, your words are persuasive, but I never rely on someone else's designs. If Kaguya truly deserves resurrection, then I will achieve it by my own will. Black Zetsu allowed himself a small, relieved breath. His deception had bought him time, if not Virgil's full trust, and for now, that was enough. My Lord Virgil, whatever you decide, you have my unwavering loyalty. Black Zetsu inclined his head in deference, though in his mind he was already plotting his next move. Chapter 913, Virgil let out a mocking laugh. Another fruit? Loyalty? In this world, so-called loyalty is nothing more than a plaything wielded by the strong. What truly interests me is your real motive, and the actual link between the Samsara Eye and this realm. Heijue's heart thundered in his chest. He'd clearly crossed Virgil's bottom line, a man whose insight and power exceeded anything he had ever imagined. Swallowing his fear, Heijue forced himself to continue the deception. My Lord Virgil, you're right. Yet even I cannot claim to know everything. The Samsara Eye's power may be deeply intertwined with the very fabric of this world. That connection, you must discover it for yourself. Virgil's gaze bore into him, eyes so deep they seemed to pierce his soul. Without a word, Virgil strode to the base of the ancient statue of Senju Hashirama. Then, as if gravity were nothing more than a suggestion, he lifted into the air and began to drift toward Heijue. With each silent step closer, an invisible weight pressed down on Heijue's chest, making it hard to draw a full breath. Your lies are artful, Heijue, Virgil said softly, but to me, they're meaningless. Where, then, lies your true value? Virgil's voice sliced through the darkness, cold and demanding. Ethan felt a surge of panic. He was closer than ever to the end. Yet, in that desperate moment, a bold plan took shape. He would trade Virgil's insatiable thirst for power for a slim chance at survival. Master Virgil, Ethan began, steadying his voice against the pounding in his chest. I know a secret, a truth about the deepest, most formidable force in the ninja world. Spare my life, and I will share it with you. Virgil paused, a playful smile curling at the corner of his mouth. Oh, what secret could possibly be worth more than your very existence? Suppressing the tremor in his heart, Ethan held Virgil's gaze. The secret of the Otsutsuki clan. Its power is potent enough to upend the entire world order, to raise you above every other being. He inhaled deeply, letting his voice fall into a smooth, persuasive cadence. Long ago, the Otsutsuki walked among us as demigods. Their wisdom and might were beyond mortal comprehension, and buried within their legacy lies a technique so profound it can reshape fate itself. Ethan leaned against the cool stone wall, flanked by Virgil and the ever-watchful Heijue. Before them coiled Black Zetsu, its inky form drifting like a living shadow. Heijue folded his arms and spoke, his tone measured. According to legend, the Otsutsuki clan journeyed from planet to planet in search of what they call the God Tree Fruit. Our world was merely one of their many testing grounds. He let the silence stretch, eyes flicking to Virgil. Ethan noticed a strange light glinting in Virgil's gaze. He was clearly intrigued. Over centuries, they came into conflict with the native inhabitants of this world and were eventually defeated, Heijue continued. But they never left empty-handed. Before vanishing, they planted powerful contingencies, most crucial among them the Reincarnation Eye, a dojutsu capable of granting its wielder near limitless power. Its true source is the legendary sacred tree, which feeds on countless life forces until it bears fruit containing the purest energy in the universe. Dark tendrils of mist swirled around Black Zetsu's form as it spoke in a low hiss. But that is only the beginning. Virgil leaned forward, eager for more. Before their downfall, Black Zetsu went on, the Otsutsuki devised a grand design to harvest this world's chakra and breach the barrier to their home dimension. The Eye of the Moon project is the keystone of that plan. A chill ran down Ethan's spine. If the Otsutsuki succeeded, it would mean war not just for this planet, but for every realm they had ever touched. And now, if Black Zetsu spoke true, that war had only just begun. Black Zetsu's voice was cold and measured as it spoke. They revived Uchiha Kaguya Haobara and used her power to cast the infinite Tsukuyomi, wrapping the entire world in a single dream. In that dream, every living being's chakra was siphoned off like precious nutrients, feeding the divine tree until it could grow again. Virgil's expression shifted, an unmistakable flash of déjà vu creasing his brow. He'd done something similar when he devoured the fruit of the demon realm tree, the inverse Kabbalah. Only then, to reclaim that power, he would have had to bargain with the Lord God. Now, the suggestion that another world held comparable fruits intrigued him deeply. Why should his strength depend solely on promises made to a deity? Other realms might offer greater power still. The playful curl of his lips slowly flattened into a mask of serious contemplation. He fixed Black Zetsu with a steady gaze, as if trying to peer through the creature's words into a distant, forgotten age, and to glimpse the Otsutsuki clan's legendary might. "You're telling me the Otsutsuki voyaged between the stars seeking the divine tree's fruit?" His tone was low, magnetic, brimming with the hunger of a warrior who had tasted power and vowed to taste more. "So this world is just one of their many testing grounds?" Black Zetsu inclined his head, a calculating gleam in his ebony eyes. "Yes, Lord Virgil. The Otsutsuki's ambitions far exceed mere experiments. They seek to wield the universe's greatest power and use it to subjugate all existence. Their strength flows from the fruit of the divine tree." Virgil's gaze remained steady. "I appreciate your honesty, Black Zetsu. Yet understand this. Even now that I know your secret, I give no guarantee of your survival. In this world, trust is a luxury few can afford." Black Zetsu's form trembled ever so slightly, but he forced himself upright. "I understand, Lord Virgil. I ask only for the opportunity to prove my worth. After all, it is the living who shape destiny." A faint, almost imperceptible smile curved Virgil's lips, both acknowledgement and warning. "Very well, I'll grant you that chance, but do not forget, your life rests in my hands. If you dare betray me, you'll pay the price." With that, Ethan turned and strode away, leaving Black Zetsu alone in the gathering dusk, a storm of conflicted emotions churning in his chest. Ethan had indeed spared his life, at least for now, but the path ahead promised to be infinitely more treacherous. Still, with Ethan's power at his side, Black Zetsu told himself his schemes would unfold far more swiftly. Once his mother was resurrected, not even a shinobi as formidable as Ethan could stand against her. Black Zetsu allowed himself a cautious smile. Ethan's strength would prove invaluable when the time came to capture the tailed beast. Even better, the young shinobi's fascination with the sacred tree's fruit offered the perfect pretext. When the moment arrived, Zetsu would dangle the promise of that fruit before Ethan's eyes, sending him off to seize it, and unwittingly doing Zetsu's bidding. Of course, Ethan would remain wary. If Zetsu betrayed him, he'd be cut down without a second thought. But Black Zetsu was confident he could play his part convincingly enough that Ethan would never suspect the betrayal, at least not until it was too late. A chill breeze rustled the leaves, and Ethan halted mid-step, his senses on high alert. He felt it then, a silent gaze tracking his every move. Narrowing his eyes, he scanned the shadows. There, half hidden among the gnarled roots of an ancient oak, White Zetsu lay in wait, his single unblinking eye fixed intently on Ethan's form. Ethan's hand instinctively twitched toward his weapon, but he held his ground, calculating his next move. Whatever game Black Zetsu was playing, he would be ready. Chapter 914, Trends. Ethan paid White Zetsu's ever-present surveillance no mind. To him, it was nothing more than a feeble attempt by the weak to observe the strong, hardly enough to disturb his peace of mind. Besides, he had already mastered the technique for tracking Black Zetsu. Securing a trustworthy contact within that network was only a matter of time, and once established, his operations would proceed more swiftly, and far more secretly. When Black Zetsu finally staggered back into the Akatsuki's hidden headquarters, the air around him was thick with dust and unspoken tension. Obito Uchiha, seated behind the conference table, watched him approach with cool, veiled disappointment. He had counted on Black Zetsu's recent accident to hand him full control over the Eye of the Moon project. Clearly, events had not unfolded as he'd hoped. Yet Obito was nothing if not adaptable. He allowed the momentary frustration to slip away, then fixed Black Zetsu with a calm, measuring gaze. "You've returned," he said. Black Zetsu offered a slight, inscrutable smile. "Yes, my Lord Madara." At the edge of the chamber, Nagato's expression darkened with concern. Every scrap of intelligence Black Zetsu had brought back could tip the scales in their favor or spell disaster. The fate of the Eye of the Moon project now hinged on what he had to report. Ethan rose from his seat, eyes bright with anticipation as he studied the newcomer. "Where's Virgil?" he demanded, voice taut with curiosity. Heijue inclined his head slightly, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "He's gone for now," he replied evenly, "but I've convinced him to support our plan. That said, Virgil has firm personal principles, and he's made it clear he won't participate directly in capturing the tailed beasts." At once, Uchiha Obito and Nagato exchanged startled looks. They both knew how formidable Virgil's power was. With his help, the Eye of the Moon project would progress far more quickly, but his refusal to lend his strength to the field mission unsettled them. Obito leaned forward, voice edged with urgency. "Tell us everything." Heijue nodded, steepling his fingers. Virgil is elusive. His drive for power borders on obsessive. When I explained the Eye of the Moon and the promise of eternal peace it holds, he listened intently. He agrees to share his knowledge, our strategy, our defenses, even arcane insights he's gleaned over the years, but he won't set foot on the battlefield himself. A tense silence fell over the chamber. Nagato's hand hovered near his folded fan. Obito's gaze flickered between Heijue and Ethan. Finally, Obito spoke again, tone sharp. "Then what does he want in exchange? What's his price?" Heijue let the question hang for a moment before responding. "His terms are simple. Full transparency in our plans, and the freedom to pursue his own goals elsewhere, so long as they don't conflict with ours. He'll lend us his mind, not his fists." Ethan paced the length of the table, absorbing every word. The council members watched him expectantly, awaiting his verdict. Virgil's condition was far from ideal, but his strategic genius could prove indispensable. Balancing risk and reward, Ethan paused, met their eyes, and gave a measured nod. "Then we accept," he said. "We'll take Virgil's counsel and respect his boundaries. But make no mistake, if he betrays us, we'll face him together." A collective breath seemed to release from the room. The path forward was set. With Virgil's mind and Ethan's resolve, the next phase of the Eye of the Moon project could finally begin. Nagato knew all too well that partnering with someone of immense power meant understanding exactly what they wanted. Otherwise, you risked getting burned. He considered Virgil carefully. Could Virgil, like them, yearn for eternal peace? A warrior of his caliber might well harbor ambitions far beyond those of ordinary mortals. Nagato's brow furrowed. Virgil's strength was unfathomable, and if he could be persuaded to join their cause, the odds of success for the Moon's Eye project would soar. Yet Virgil's demands puzzled him. In the Akatsuki, every member existed solely to realize the Eye of the Moon plan. Any deviation was strictly forbidden. So what did Virgil really want, and was his idea of peace something they had yet to understand? After a long moment of reflection, Nagato drew a slow breath. "We must proceed with the utmost caution," he said. "Though Virgil isn't formally part of our operations, his very presence is enough to change the stakes. We must ensure he never becomes an obstacle, and we need to figure out exactly how to harness his power." Obito's Sharingan flickered as he turned to Black Zetsu. Every muscle in his body tensed with suspicion. He'd anticipated complications the moment Virgil joined their ranks, especially given Virgil's insatiable hunger for strength. A cold instinct whispered that this alliance might be more dangerous than it appeared. "Black Zetsu," Obito murmured, his voice barely more than a breath. "What did you tell Virgil? Is he planning to become the Ten-Tails Jinchuriki?" Only Obito and Black Zetsu could hear the question, yet the weight behind it was unmistakable. As Obito's eyes searched the shadowy figure before him, the air in the hideout seemed to thrum with tension. Black Zetsu, known to outsiders as Heijue, smiled in that unnerving, half-amused way of his. "Oh, you're sharper than I gave you credit for, Obito," he said softly. "But I wouldn't lose any sleep over it." Obito's fist clenched at his side. "Are you out of your mind?" he hissed. "If Virgil finds out you planted this idea, won't he pursue it?" Heijue finished for him, the corners of his lips twitching. "Yes, he will. But is that necessarily a bad thing? You and I both know how ambitious he is. He's exactly the kind of catalyst we need to hasten our plans." Obito shook his head, impatience flaring behind his eyes. Aligning with Virgil had been a gamble from the start. Virgil wasn't some pawn to be commanded. He was a warrior who thrived on power plays and shifting loyalties. Trusting him was like walking a tightrope over a bottomless pit. One wrong move and everything they'd worked for could collapse in an instant. He forced a calm mask onto his face, though his heart pounded fiercely. "Very well," he said through gritted teeth. "But mark my words, Zetsu, if Virgil's ambitions threaten to derail us, I will deal with him myself." A soft, almost mocking chuckle drifted from the darkness around them. "I've no doubt you will," Black Zetsu replied. "After all, you've always been so decisive. Obito turned away, the blood-red sheen of his eyes lingering on the shadows where Black Zetsu's form had almost vanished. As he walked back toward the command center, his mind raced with contingency plans. Aligning with Virgil might grant them the edge they craved, but at what cost? In the deadly game they were about to play, the stakes had never been higher. Ethan's words betrayed the turmoil roiling inside him. He knew all too well that Virgil's power skirted the edge of the divine, and if Virgil truly became the Ten-Tails Jinchuriki, the fallout would be catastrophic. Anxiety and resolve burned in Ethan's eyes. Every step of this path had tested him to his limits, but this challenge felt by far the most daunting. Leaning in, he spoke in a low, urgent voice. "Hey Zetsu, what exactly are you planning? We both know Virgil, his ambition, his skill. If he truly harnesses the Ten-Tails, the consequences will be disastrous." A cryptic smile curled Black Zetsu's lips. "Ethan, I understand your fears, but it's precisely that power which will unlock our ultimate goal. Trust me, I have a careful strategy for containing it." His tone remained calm, almost reverent, as he continued. "Virgil's strength lies in his peerless swordsmanship and unshakable composure. But mastering the Ten-Tails is an entirely different ordeal. Very few could even withstand its force, let alone control it." Black Zetsu leaned closer, the candlelight casting long shadows across his pale face. "I did the opportunity to feed him just enough information, not to turn him into a Jinchuriki right away, but to awaken his curiosity, to give him something to chase. That buys us time." Obito's brow nodded in suspicion. "Just stalling? And if he actually goes after it?" A sly smile flickered across Black Zetsu's lips as he turned his back, eyes glinting. "Then we'll escalate." Obito pressed. "Escalate how?" Without hesitation, Black Zetsu replied, "We'll use the impure world reincarnation to bring Madara back. Let Madara deal with Virgil. Even Virgil would think twice with Uchiha Madara standing in his way." Obito fell silent. He knew all too well the terrifying power of Madara Uchiha, an existence even he dared not underestimate. Chapter 915, The Poison Ninja Village in the Land of Waves. But even if Madara is resurrected, can he truly handle Virgil? Obito asked, his voice tight with doubt. The gap between their powers might be far greater than we realize. Black Zetsu smiled confidently. A reincarnated Madara alone might struggle against Virgil, but with Nagato's Rinnegan, Madara will sweep him aside without effort. Obito fell silent. He still couldn't picture just how formidable Madara would be with the Samsara Eye. Could he surpass Nagato? More importantly, could he really defeat someone like Virgil? The uncertainty gnawed at him. Black Zetsu watched Obito's hesitation and inwardly smirked. He knew Obito was reluctant to bring Madara back, and that exact reluctance played perfectly into his plans. With another threat like Virgil looming, Obito would soon feel he had no choice but to proceed with the resurrection. In fact, to ensure nothing derailed his scheme, Zetsu had already weighed the option of enlisting Orochimaru's help. After all, Madara had long ago fallen for Zetsu's lies, trusting every word he spoke. Now, every piece was in place to force Obito's hand. With Madara Uchiha now under their control, reanimated by the impure world reincarnation, there was no question of rebellion. Even in his restored body, Madara's sheer presence crushed any spark of dissent. Virgil, too, had no equals among the reanimated shinobi, so it was imperative to keep him appeased. Although he'd been told only half the truth about the Akatsuki's ultimate goal, he was led to believe that retrieving the fruit of the God Tree was the organization's sole ambition. Black Zetsu, however, would see to it that Virgil never regretted his choice or acted against their interests. To further strengthen their position, Black Zetsu dispatched a squad of White Zetsu clones to track down Orochimaru, the S-rank rogue ninja whose scientific curiosity made him dangerously useful. With promises of forbidden jutsu, secret knowledge of the shinobi world, or even greater power, Orochimaru could be turned into their most devoted ally. "What are our next steps?" Conan asked, her voice calm and steady. In the Akatsuki she was known for her level-headedness, and now she joined the Strategic Council. "Press ahead with the plan," Obito Uchiha said, his tone resolute. "At the same time, intensify our surveillance of Virgil. We cannot afford any surprises. Every one of his moves must be anticipated and controlled." Chapter 8. "We need to brace for every possibility," Nagato said, eyes narrowed. That includes Virgil turning on us at any moment, or interference from some other faction we haven't even considered. They spent a few more minutes fine-tuning their contingency plans, then silently agreed to disperse and put their preparations into motion. Uchiha Obito strode away, shoulders tense with anxiety and reluctant determination. Black Zetsu watched him go with a disinterested flick of the wrist, already focused on Nagato's next request. Nagato and the Outer Path demon statue both needed time to recover from their recent exertions. Still, Nagato felt the lingering effects of his last fusion with White Zetsu, how much stronger, how much more resilient he had become, and he hungered for more. "Zei," he said, addressing the shapeless figure at his side, "bring me a new White Zetsu." Black Zetsu bowed his head. "Consider it done, my lord." Truth be told, Black Zetsu wasn't worried. Even with another White Zetsu, he thought, Nagato wouldn't suddenly dominate the world. He'd merely become incrementally stronger, a bit harder to kill. And right now, that was exactly what his plans required. Far across the ocean, on a secluded island in the land of waves, another transformation was quietly underway. Cradled by sapphire waves and hidden from prying eyes, a brand new shinobi village was rising, an unprecedented force about to make its debut on the grand stage of the ninja world. This small, sparsely populated country, rich neither in people nor in resources, had quietly become the dark horse of the ninja world's new era. When the Poison Village emerged, the Land of Waves was suddenly infused with an unseen, formidable power. Its founding was no accident, but the brainchild of two masterful scientists, Wesker and Alex Mercer. In this brutal jungle of shinobi politics, ordinary ninjas found it nearly impossible to survive, and Ronin, those wandering warriors or rebels shunned by the great villages, had even fewer options. To change that balance, Wesker and Mercer engineered a revolutionary Kekkei Genkai, a virus-based bloodline limit that bestowed unimaginable abilities on its hosts. This unprecedented offer shone like a beacon in the darkness, drawing in every outcast who had ever been written off for lack of talent or cast aside for betraying old loyalties. Each of them hungered for a place where they could belong and prove their worth. The Poison Village promised them exactly that, a fresh start and a chance to reshape the ninja world in their own image. Wesker and Alex Mercer both recognized that the so-called abandoned ninjas, if given the right opportunity, could become a force to be reckoned with. They had little interest in where the shinobi's loyalties lay. What mattered was the end result. Only by seizing control of a hidden village and molding it into their own power base could they secure the vital intelligence they craved. To that end, Wesker quietly orchestrated events behind the scenes. Though he found it baffling that such skilled warriors had long submitted to their daimyo, the arrangement suited his purposes perfectly. Under his influence, the daimyo of Wave Country issued a startling decree. For the sake of national security and in response to mounting international tensions, and even the threat of a ninja world crisis, he would establish the Poison Hidden Village. This official proclamation not only conferred legal status on the new stronghold, but also fueled public curiosity and high expectations. Hidden amid the tidal marshes on the northern coast of Wave Country's main island, land once reclaimed by the sea and perpetually cloaked in thick fog, the Poison Hidden Village would soon begin training an elite cadre of shinobi, poised to reshape the balance of power. This region was once a forbidding wasteland, an accursed swamp, shunned by all who valued their lives. But under the combined vision of Albert Wesker and Alex Mercer, the land has undergone a remarkable transformation. They released specialized viruses into the stagnant waters, then seeded the marshes with engineered flora that disperses its ever-present fog. What was once deathly still now pulses with strange new life. At the heart of this reclaimed terrain stands the Poison Village, an unsettling settlement built from living biomass. Thick, writhing tendrils of virus-grown tissue form walls and walkways. Bioluminescent vines coil around lampposts, casting a sickly green glow. It is a place of eerie beauty and superbly engineered dread, exactly as Wesker intended. Alongside the village's founding came an ambitious recruitment drive across the wider Land of Waves. Notices plastered every town square, alleys, and remote hamlet, declaring the Poison Village's call for talent. The posters spoke of generous pay, advanced training, and the promise of virus bloodlines under the tutelage of leading scientists, an opportunity for true self-transcendence. On the surface, the criteria appeared straightforward: basic ninja competencies and a willingness to work in the swamp. Yet hidden within the fine print was a far more demanding requirement: absolute allegiance to the Poison Village's philosophy. Loyalty, they made clear, was the ultimate test. Those who passed would walk away not merely as mercenaries, but as conduits of a new biotechnological order. Among the first candidates to arrive was Ethan, a young shinobi driven by equal parts ambition and curiosity. He had grown up hearing whispers of the Forbidden Swamp, its rumored horrors and its unprecedented potential. Now, stepping through the village's living gate, he felt a thrill, unlike any he had known before. Here, he told himself, the future would be made, and he intended to claim a place at its side. News of the new territory spread like wildfire across the land of waves, and soon the entire ninja world was buzzing. Countless dreamers, wandering shinobi anxious to prove their worth, and rebellious outcasts seeking refuge all poured into the fledgling domain. Some came in pursuit of power, others to earn honor, and still others simply to find a place they could finally call home. Chapter 916, The Poison Village. The very announcement of the Poison Village sent shockwaves rippling through the land of waves, and indeed throughout the entire ninja world. Islanders spoke of it in hushed tones, equal parts curious and apprehensive. Even its name, Poison Village, tugged at the imagination, promising both deadly peril and forbidden knowledge. According to the stories, the village's founder was once a legendary poison master, a shinobi whose fame rested on his unrivaled expertise with toxins. Tired of unending battles and endless betrayals, he vanished into a remote, uncharted stretch of coastline and carved out his own hidden realm. There, fellow poison masters gathered to serve his vision, building an enclave where arcane venomous arts and taboo techniques flourish. Around the hamlet's perimeter, nature itself has been weaponized. Vines and creepers, steeped in lethal sap, weave together into an almost impenetrable living barrier. One misstep among those tangling tendrils is said to be enough to end a warrior's life in agony. Unsurprisingly, even the boldest explorers pause at the forest's edge, weighing the risk before venturing further. When dusk falls, the taverns of the Land of Waves glow with lantern light and bustle with activity. Bartenders, polishing their cups, lean in close to wide-eyed patrons and spin vivid tales of the Poison Village. Stories of assassinations carried out by a single drop of toxin, of mist-shrouded training courtyards, and of the shadowy shinobi who now call that deadly refuge home. Legends swirl around the Poison Village. Some say its ninja harness the toxins of nature itself, bending them into deadly weapons. Others whisper of ancient medical tomes and antidote formulas hidden deep within its walls, secrets said to cure even the most stubborn diseases. These stories travel from mouth to ear, each retelling adding a new layer of intrigue. At the bustling docks, sailors share the latest rumors brought from distant lands. In the fertile fields beyond, farmers pause in their labor to gaze at a once barren stretch of earth now teeming with life and with questions. Every day, thousands make their way toward the Poison Village. Some arrive hoping to master the villagers' famed techniques. Others come merely to watch history in the making, awed by the rise of this once-forgotten ninja enclave. What has turned the Poison Village into such a sensation so quickly isn't just its secrets or its growing power. It's the village's unprecedented openness. Here, there are no impossible rites of passage and no rigid social castes. Anyone with the will to learn is welcomed. That inclusive spirit, more than anything, has drawn the world's attention and set tongues wagging. From the moment word spread that the village of Poison would accept anyone, regardless of birth, age, or innate talent, so long as they were determined to become shinobi, countless desperate families dared to hope. For the first time, ordinary civilians believed they could seize their destinies instead of submitting to generations of poverty. To sweeten the offer, the Poison Village guaranteed generous stipends and comfortable housing for all formally enlisted recruits, an irresistible promise to those who had known only hardship. Of course, danger came hand in hand with this opportunity. Ninja life is fraught with risk, and rumors of brutal missions and lethal toxins were everywhere. Yet for many, The chance to rise above their meager beginnings outweighed any fear of death. Poverty, they reasoned, was a slow, unbreakable trap. Becoming a shinobi, even in the perilous service of the Poison Village, felt like the one true ticket out. Still, as the village's reputation soared, so did the skepticism. How could a minor nation like the Land of Waves afford such lavish support? Every shinobi stronghold is a voracious consumer of resources, month after month, year after year, yet produces little to offset its costs. The Great Leaf Village, for instance, boasts a vast economy and foreign alliances to underwrite its ninja divisions. The Poison Village, by contrast, seemed to appear overnight with no clear source of funding. Critics whispered that behind its egalitarian facade lay secrets far darker than any toxin its warriors wielded. Ethan, formerly known only by the muddled name Luther in hastily circulated translations, stood at the edge of the recruitment booth, his heart pounding with equal parts excitement and dread. He was only 16, nothing more than a penniless fisherman's son, yet here he was, staring at a chance to reshape his life. Whatever lay behind Poison Village's grand promises, he told himself, the path they offered was worth every ounce of risk. After all, he had nothing left to lose, and, perhaps, a future to gain. The Poison Village's annual expenses far outstrip the income it earns from missions. Most of its budget must come from the daimyo of the Fire Country. Given that Wave Country is both small and impoverished, everyone's been watching closely to see whether its resources can sustain an entire ninja village devoted to biological warfare. Ethan stood in the village's central hall, reviewing the latest funding reports. Only the heads of the 5 great ninja villages are ever referred to as Shadow, so he never claims that title for himself. He is, quite simply, the leader of the Poison Village, and that designation carries enough weight. Unlike a traditional shinobi, Ethan is foremost a virologist. His genius lies in understanding and manipulating virus structure and toxin pathways. Within this hidden hamlet, he serves not just as its commander, but as the very heart of its scientific enterprise. Under his guidance, the Poison Village has staked out a unique role among the ninja world's established powers. It wields viruses and venoms as weapons, developing specialized combat techniques that other villages would never dare. This path of living weapons was pioneered long ago by Hanzo the Salamander, the legendary demigod of the ninja world. But where Hanzo leaned on sheer brute force, Ethan's vision is subtler and far more terrifying. It is his brilliance that gives the Poison Village its sole claim to relevance, caught as it is between the might of the 5 shadows and the precarious patronage of the Fire Country. Hanzo's experiment had collapsed in failure, but Wesker refused to be deterred. Over months of research, he gathered every scrap of intelligence on the Salamander's legacy, and then set his sights on a bolder goal. He would build a shinobi village like no other, a hidden forge where viruses and poisons thrived alongside chakra. No such place existed in the ninja world, and Wesker was certain that by infusing toxic agents with chakra, he could perfect what he called the Venom Escape, a bioweapon of unprecedented lethality. At the heart of this project stood his lieutenant, Alex Mercer, the newly appointed captain of the Anbu. It was astonishing that a fledgling village could already field an Anbu unit, let alone be led by one of Konoha's elite. Just how many operatives Mercer had already recruited, nobody outside their ranks knew. Alex Mercer, Wesker intoned, his voice a low, velvety drawl that seemed designed to unnerve. Your arrivals are always so quiet. In the next heartbeat, Mercer appeared at his back, stepping from the shadows like a wraith. He wore a form-fitting black tactical suit that draped over him like liquid smoke, the fabric rippling with every subtle shift of muscle. Without turning his head, Wesker's sharp gaze bore into him. Mercer offered the slightest nod. I bring news from our reconnaissance teams, he said, voice equally hushed. They've isolated a new viral strain, highly adaptable to chakra suppression. The initial tests are promising. Wesker finally turned to face him, eyes glinting with savage excitement. Good, he whispered. Prepare the inoculations. Tonight we begin the alchemy of war. Ethan hovered beyond the stars, sunlight glinting off his armor as he watched the world below come alive. He had restored every player, heroes, villains, and foot soldiers, at full strength. He had to cast them into the unfolding drama to see how their paths would cross. Among them, Albert Wesker and Alex Mercer moved of their own accord, each driven by the dark science that defined him. Ethan's voice drifted down like a challenge. How many formidable targets remain among those wandering shinobi and their rebellious clans? Mercer's lips curled into a sneer. He raised dark, glittering eyes and shook his head. Rogue ninjas and the so-called Nami clans? They're nothing but detritus, forgotten remnants of a world that's already cast them aside. Surely, Ethan pressed, there must be at least a few Jonin-level rebels or elite Nami shinobi left? From the shadows, Wesker stepped forward, arms folded, a faint smile playing on his lips. I've taken care of them all, he announced, calm and confident. A sudden gleam passed through Mercer's gaze, a flash of something almost amused. He wasn't simply a predator who fed on life to grow stronger. Thanks to the black light virus coursing through his veins, every victim's memories, skills, and secrets became part of him, woven into his ever-expanding arsenal of power. And now, with every ninja strike and every virus-born mutation unfolding below, Mercer was poised to absorb and outmatch whatever resistance remained. Ethan's transformation had been so swift, almost mythical, that he'd become an undeniable force in the ninja world in record time. How do you feel after absorbing it? Wesker asked, eyeing him with casual curiosity. He'd gone through the same process himself and found it unremarkable. He simply wanted to know what Ethan had gained. Impressive, Ethan replied coolly. By the standards of this world, my chakra reserves now rival those of a tailed beast, and my ninjutsu has grown devastatingly powerful. There was a quiet confidence in Ethan's voice. Having absorbed countless souls and fully evolved his blacklight virus, he'd unlocked an astonishing wellspring of chakra, comparable to a humanoid tailed beast. Chapter 917, Power is Everything. Even a C-rank ninjutsu, when channeled through Ethan's mutated form, struck with the force of 100 shinobi unleashing their techniques in unison. In the shadowed chamber, Wesker's voice cut through the charged air, low, steady, and laden with authority. Your evolution defies every principle of biological science, he said. We engineered the blacklight virus to be the ultimate weapon, but you transformed it into something far greater. It granted you superhuman strength, lightning-fast reflexes, and the uncanny ability to absorb knowledge in an instant. Yet, as you well know, such power carries an unspeakable price. Ethan turned to face the floor-to-ceiling window. His virus-altered eyes reflected the vast cityscape beyond, where neon-lit skyscrapers rose beside ancient temples in a blend of cutting-edge technology and time-worn tradition. A storm of conflicting emotions flickered across his features: pride, regret, curiosity, and dread. Pressing a hand against the cool glass, he spoke softly, as if confessing to the night itself. Each life I consume stretches the limits of my being. With every soul I absorb, I venture deeper into the heart of humanity and into its darkest depths. Ethan felt the memories crash over him like a tidal wave, flooding his mind with the joys, sorrows, loves, hatreds, and thirsts for vengeance of countless lives. They made him infinitely more complex and infinitely more alone. In a world where no one, least of all himself, could truly understand him, he was a stranger to everyone. He drew in a slow breath. Still, it's this very loneliness and confusion that drive me forward. I've learned that only by charging ahead and breaking through my own limits can I find a spark of light in this endless darkness. I hunger for understanding and for power. Ethan paused, his gaze sharpening. Because only by surpassing every boundary can I reach a summit no one else can even imagine. Albert Wesker gave a curt nod of approval. He had poured every ounce of his ambition into the same goal. Just don't devour them all at once, Wesker warned Alex Mercer. We need manpower. Mercer offered a composed smile. Don't worry, I've already used the blacklight virus to transform several candidates. As for those who were consumed, we made their fates public. They couldn't withstand the virus's venomous onslaught and died. Even so, there's still a long line of volunteers ready to trigger the venom strain. Wesker's eyes gleamed. Mercer's calm assurance was exactly the progress they'd been waiting for. Wesker's smile carried both an unshakable confidence in his power and a keen understanding of human nature's complexities. He had indeed used the blacklight virus to transform a handful of people. These transformed agents were folded into Alex's experiments and emerged with the ability known as poison escape. Those who couldn't bear its burden were quietly eliminated, their deaths spun into public tales of noble sacrifice in the pursuit of ultimate strength. Rather than provoking fear, these stories only stoked the masses' hunger for power. A playful glint danced in Wesker's eyes. In this world, he said, power is worshipped above all else. For ordinary folk, becoming a ninja is almost the only path to changing their destiny. They're desperate for strength, eager to shatter the chains of tradition, even if it means facing endless dangers. He sighed, the warmth leaving his expression. And yet, that's this world's tragedy. While daimyo and nobles bask in generations of wealth and glory, common people remain trapped in perpetual labor and poverty. Ethan watched in silence as the latest recruits completed their transformation under Albert Wesker's cold gaze. Once ordinary civilians, farmers, artisans, shopkeepers, they'd volunteered for the madness of T-virus and G-virus infection, driven by a single desperate hope, the chance to seize power and rewrite their destinies. What they sought wasn't glory or gold, but opportunity. The opportunity to prove themselves, to shake off the chains of inherited fate. The ninja's path was littered with thorns, unrelenting training, agonizing physical trials, the ever-present specter of death. But for these recruits, it shone brighter than any jewel. Here, in Wesker's clandestine compound, they believed they stood a fighting chance. Day after day, they honed their bodies and wills under Wesker's unforgiving discipline. Limbs cracked and blood spilled as each recruit struggled to master enhanced reflexes, deadly stealth techniques, and the savage strength granted by the viral injections. Yet not once did a single voice rise in protest. Instead, men and women wept tears of gratitude, convinced that this brutal crucible was their only hope of escaping the rigid social order that had stifled their families for generations. In a world where power was the supreme currency, death was a small price to pay. To be weak was to be nothing. Daimyo and nobles had inherited privilege since birth. Their lives were preordained in silk and gold. For everyone else, the path to respect led only through strength, through becoming a weapon that none could ignore. Ethan understood all of this intimately. Born the son of a lowly craftsman, he had seen his family's name fade into obscurity. Rumors of Wesker's personal guard, an elite corps of supercharged ninjas, reached even the poorest villages. For the first time, Ethan felt hope flare in his chest, not out of blind faith in a mysterious benefactor, but because power, once grasped, could never be taken from you. Now, standing at the edge of the training ground, Ethan felt resolve harden in his veins. He would endure the trials, master the virus-enhanced fighting arts, and claim the only thing that mattered in this world, the chance to determine his own fate. If death lay in his path, so be it. In the end, even a fallen ninja is remembered, while the powerless are forgotten forever. For ordinary families, life is a never-ending cycle, generation after generation of farmers tilling the lowest soil, or fishermen braving the same rolling waves day in and day out. Everyone longs to break free from those invisible shackles, but reality closes in like an iron net. In villages and fishing ports alike, the dream of becoming a ninja sparkles as the only true hope of escape. Though the shinobi's path is fraught with unknown dangers, it still offers the chance to rewrite one's destiny. Ninjas don't just master extraordinary martial skills, they carry their family's honor and hopes wherever they go. When a young recruit departs for the Ninja Academy, his whole household swells with pride, believing this might be the one opportunity to shatter a generational curse and ascend beyond their humble origins. Yet the ninja world is ruthless. Grueling daily drills, relentless skirmishes, and the ever-present specter of death turn that coveted glory into something stained with blood and tears. Still, countless young men, among them 15-year-old Ethan, are willing to stake their youth, their futures, even their lives on this perilous, uncertain road. Deep down, they aren't afraid of death itself. The true horror lies in an endless, hopeless descent into oblivion. The arrivals of Wesker and Alex Mercer have unleashed a tempest across these lands. The power they command is both a harbinger of ruin and a promise of rebirth. In a world ruled by strength, they each redefine the fragile balance between life and death, hope and despair. For ordinary people, desperate to alter their fate, choosing to follow Wesker or Mercer may be the only path to salvation. Although the realm is at peace, scouts from the 5 great ninja villages, and others beyond, have pieced together rumors of the elusive Poison Village, yet no one can penetrate its defenses. Wesker and Mercer have spread the poison escape, poison mist technique, a living barrier of viral toxins. Any who approach recklessly find themselves felled by these airborne poisons, and there is no cure. In the ninja world, scientists might one day unlock cures for the Black Light virus, the T virus, the G virus, and their deadly kin, but it will take far too long to help anyone who's already been exposed. Infected shinobi have, in effect, only a date with death. That's why the spies have been driven to seek their next move in the Land of Waves. Chapter 918, Playing with Poison Invites Hatred. Ethan crouched at the edge of a moonlit clearing, his breath steady despite the chill in the air. Before him lay the hidden Poison Ninja Village, an enigma whispered in every shinobi camp, a place of nightmares where warriors were taught to weaponize toxins with ruthless precision. Even the most battle-hardened ninja trembled at its name. Around Ethan, figures slipped through the shadows, scouts from Konoha, Iwagakure's intelligence brokers, Kumogakure's swift operatives, and secret agents from the sand and mist. They hailed from rival villages and clandestine orders, yet this night they shared a single mission: infiltrate the Poison Village, unearth its secrets, and deliver vital intelligence to their homelands. In the great tapestry of shinobi warfare, this village occupied a peculiar space. Unlike Orochimaru's Sound Village, whose emergence had soon drawn Konoha's cautious gaze, the Poison Village remained unclaimed by any major power. It did not marshal armies in open conflict, nor did it answer to princes or warlords. It thrived in silence and subterfuge, a ghost among nations. Ethan surveyed the scene with unwavering resolve. He knew the stakes. Whoever mastered the village's lethal arts could shift the balance of power across the entire ninja world. Around him, the spy network buzzed with low-voiced strategizing, but in his chest, Ethan's heart beat a single truth. Curiosity without caution was a poison far deadlier than any jutsu. Drawing a deep breath, he slipped into the forest's darkness, determined to pierce the village's veil of mystery, or perish trying. Despite its astonishing combat prowess, the Poison Ninja Village remains the ninja world's best-kept secret, its unorthodox recruitment policy rippling through the underworld like a silent warning. Unlike other clans that vet lineage, loyalties, and past deeds, the Poison Village cares only about one thing: whether a recruit can survive its merciless initiation. On paper, anyone brave or desperate enough may join. In reality, only those willing to endure near unbearable torment make the cut. That deceptively open policy conceals a far darker purpose. Outsiders from all walks of life, rogue assassins, outcast warriors, broken survivors, are drawn here by equal parts ambition and desperation. Once within the village's walls, they discover its true nature, a massive crucible designed to shatter human limits. Long-term spies have finally pieced together the horrific initiation rite. Newcomers are unceremoniously cast into a pit teeming with lethal, mutagenic poisons. Each toxin promises a swift end to ordinary flesh, but also carries the arcane power to disassemble and reforge body and spirit. For days on end, recruits writhe in agony, subjected to a barrage of venom that erodes flesh, warps sinew, and twists mind. Most perish, but those few who survive emerge reborn, bodies reinforced by biochemical transmutation, senses sharpened to razor's edge, will hardened like steel. These transformed shinobi, living weapons of unparalleled lethality, are the Poison Village's legacy, an invisible force shaping the clandestine balance of power in the ninja world. Their skin had been tempered to iron-hard resilience, impervious to virtually every toxin. Their senses, sight, hearing, smell, were sharpened to a preternatural degree, able to detect the faintest disturbance in the air. Most alarmingly, they'd learned to produce, shape, and project these poisons at will, turning their very bodies into lethal weapons. In truth, this venom was a viral agent sculpted by Albert Wesker and Alex Mercer. Through their biotechnical mastery, the virus's infectious component was minimized, while its toxicity was ramped to the extreme. Precisely so, these ninja operatives could handle, control, and unleash it without succumbing themselves. Ethan, seated at the head of the table, tapped the haptic display to bring up volleys of field reports. With chakra as their power source, they qualify as true shinobi, he said quietly, but it's their Po, Isan, that makes them the most dangerous adversaries we've ever faced. Heads in the dimly lit briefing room dipped as agents digested each new revelation. Ethan continued, voice grim. Picture them on the battlefield, children in appearance, yet utterly merciless. Their bodies are walking pharmacies. A single exhalation can be converted into a tailored cloud of deadly gas, adaptable to any combat scenario. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the assembled intelligence chiefs. The reports were unanimous. These young operatives, with their innocent faces and ironclad hides, harbored a single, terrifying purpose: total annihilation. And they were only the beginning. This ability not only strips an opponent's defenses in battle, but lets its user kill without so much as a whisper. Ethan's eyes darkened with barely contained concern. The ninjutsu in question wasn't just a matter of precise chakra control, it infused every strike with lethal toxin. A poison ninja's attack struck like a silent breath of death, impossible to defend against. What was more unsettling, their weapons, from long needles and shuriken to broad-bladed swords, were all soaked in venom. Even the faintest graze could unleash poison through an enemy's veins, leaving them writhing in agony as toxins spread unchecked. For poison ninjas, however, these same toxins were old companions. Years of gradual exposure had not only dulled their pain, but granted them a measure of immunity, and in some cases the ability to absorb and repurpose poison for themselves. Though they did still feel pain, their forged resistance made them formidable, nearly unstoppable, on the battlefield. Extremely dangerous, the gathered spies whispered in unison, their faces pale. Ethan and his allies knew that if the poison ninja village were allowed to flourish unchecked, the fallout would be catastrophic. These ninja weren't simply skilled fighters, they wielded toxins as their primary weapons, threatening the fragile peace of the ninja world and risking an unprecedented disaster. Swift action was imperative. They had to relay their findings to the major ninja villages before the poison village could become an unstoppable force. In the long and blood-stained history of shinobi warfare, only one name inspired more dread than most: Sancho Hanzo, the demigod of venom. His reputation slithered through the night like a deadly serpent, stripping even the bravest warriors of their courage at the mere mention of his name. Hanzo's fearsome legacy rested not just on his mastery of ninjutsu and taijutsu, but on poison techniques so advanced they defied belief. He commanded a breed of creature known as the Sancho fish, tiny, unassuming beasts whose venom could fell an entire squadron of elite ninja in moments. No blade was needed. His enemies collapsed in silent convulsions, their lifeblood drained by an unseen toxin. This unseen threat haunted the collective nightmares of shinobi everywhere, a chilling reminder that the greatest danger often strikes without warning. For generations, Sancho Hanzo's name was synonymous with invincibility. Yet no reign lasts forever, and as new powers arose, his glory began to fade. When Hanzo's most potent poisons threatened to unmake entire armies, it was Granny Chiyo of Sunagakure who delivered the decisive counterstrike. With her masterful blend of medical knowledge and antidote crafting, she unraveled Hanzo's deadliest toxin in mid-battle, shattering the myth of his unbeatable venom. Granny Chiyo's triumph did more than secure her place in history. It reminded the shinobi world that even legends can be toppled. In the years that followed, the collective dread of poison receded, memories dimmed, and life returned to a wary normal. But beneath the surface, a new menace was taking shape. Far from the eyes of the great ninja nations, a secret village devoted entirely to the art of poison quietly sprang to life. Talented toxin masters from every corner of the globe converged there, each bringing ancient tricks and newfound innovations. Together, they perfected CK tales of venom more intricate and deadly than anything the world had seen. Now, whispers of this hidden society reached the 5 great villages. Intelligence reports warn that, if left unchecked, this poison village could eclipse even Hanzo the Salamander's reign of terror. To head off such a threat, the major shinobi powers have dispatched their spies, tasking them with uncovering every scrap of information about the poison master's remote enclave. The stage is set, and the ninja world braces itself for an invisible enemy whose weapons flow through blades, and every drop of water the unsuspecting may drink. They all understood that those who mastered poison were among the most feared figures in the ninja world. A single vial could snuff out a life in moments, and widespread use of toxins threatened not only individual shinobi, but the moral foundations of every village. If the poison village ever lost control of its power, the devastation would be unimaginable. Determined to prevent that outcome, the major ninja nations formed an unprecedented alliance. Elite operatives were dispatched to infiltrate the region around the poison village, watching its movements day and night. At the same time, each village bolstered its defenses, shoring up layers of medical countermeasures, refining antidotes, and training specialists in toxin identification and neutralization. In this tense standoff, every shinobi on the lookout knew that vigilance and preparedness were the only safeguards against a catastrophe born of poisons. Chapter 919. If you don't want to pay protection money, then fight. In a war where no gunpowder is used, every nuance carries weight, and every choice can reshape the ninja world's future. The hidden poison village knew this better than anyone. Seeking to announce their arrival on the grand stage, they set their sights on the bandit clans and the wave ninjas who had long plagued the borders of the land of waves. Though these marauders were by no means insignificant, the poison village regarded them merely as live-fire training targets. At dawn, the first contingent of poison ninja graduates gathered at the village's mist-shrouded gates. Their faces were marked with cryptic toxin-resistant tattoos, and each wore a specialized anti-poison ensemble. Across every forehead protector gleamed the unmistakable skull emblem, a stark promise of death and dread. Under the oppressive morning sky, their formation bristled with quiet anticipation. At the center of the ranks stood 14-year-old Ethan, codename Venom Fang, already legendary for his uncanny aptitude for venomous techniques. Though youth still shadowed his features, his eyes burned with both fierce ambition and the pangs of uncertainty. Today marked his first real mission beyond the safety of Poison Village, and he would lead his comrades into unknown danger, armed with nothing more than lethal poison, unshakable resolve, and the weight of his village's reputation on his shoulders. Ethan, known in the clans as Poison Fang, was lean, with eyes so keen they seemed to pierce straight into a person's darkest fears. On the battlefield, he moved like a phantom, slipping silently through enemy ranks. With every whispered breath, he unleashed an invisible, odorless toxin so insidious it corroded flesh and spirit alike, leaving foes weakened and despairing long before they understood what had struck them. The moment the engagement began, Ethan's Poison Ninja Squad exploited the terrain to its fullest. They fanned out, surrounding the enemy in an airtight ring. At the center of the assault, Ethan drew on his extraordinary agility and mastery of toxins to whip the opposing forces into chaos. The once arrogant mercenary ninjas, proud of their ninjutsu and physical prowess, found their skills dissolving under the relentless, corrosive miasma. Stricken by the unseen poison, they could only watch helplessly as their comrades collapsed one after another. With every measured step and each new cloud of venom, Ethan tightened his grip on the battlefield. Slowly but inexorably, control passed to the Poison Ninjas, and under Poison Fang's command, victory was all but assured. Ethan stood at the edge of the clearing, watching as the bandits and rogue ninjas who had terrorized the border lay strewn across the ground, their eyes filled with fear and bitter defiance. Around him, the shinobi of the Poison Ninja village surveyed the scene in triumphant silence, their faces alight with both the joy of victory and eager anticipation of the challenges to come. This decisive battle did more than secure the frontier. It thrust the Poison Ninja village into the spotlight of the ninja world. But with renown comes rivalry. From their long-standing positions of power and prestige, the 5 great nations now watched the upstart Poison Village with growing alarm. For generations, these nations had maintained a fragile peace, upheld by vast armies, expansive territories, and deep cultural traditions. Yet the emergence of a clan that wielded lethal toxins as its chief weapon seemed to some like a venomous serpent lying in wait, ready to shatter the balance of power and threaten their hard-won status. As word of the Poison Village's triumph spread, alliances shifted, and old rivalries burned more fiercely than ever. The very existence of the Poison Ninja Village turns everything you thought you knew about shinobi on its head. Here, Warriors have abandoned the orthodox reliance on physical prowess, ninjutsu, and genjutsu. Instead, they have perfected the art of toxin warfare. From harvesting the deadliest venoms of the natural world to synthesizing brand new chemical horrors in their laboratories, every poison at their disposal becomes a weapon. They don't merely carry these toxins in vials or on poisoned blades. They infuse their surroundings, terrain, climate, even the emotional state of their enemies, with subtle, hidden hazards. An unwary opponent can find himself felled by a single breath of mist, a drop of dew, or a blade coated so lightly with venom that the wound seems almost harmless, until it's too late. But such ruthless ingenuity has made the Poison Village anathema to the 5 great nations. Each power fears that this remote community's growing mastery of poison will shatter the balance they've maintained for generations, and challenge their very dominance. Unlike most minor states, which accept the protection of a greater power and the tribute that comes with it, the Poison Village has chosen a different path. They pay no protection fees, refuse to accept edicts from any capital, and answer to no one but themselves. In a world built on alliances and vassalage, that independence is more dangerous than any toxin they could unleash. This bold move was nothing less than a direct challenge to the 5 great nations' authority. Their goals were simple, yet ruthless: absolute control. Any force that slipped free of their grasp was treated as a threat to be eliminated. The sudden rise of the Poison Village struck a raw nerve among the 5 great nations, and a secret conspiracy quickly took shape. Outwardly, they kept the village under cautious watch, but behind the scenes they dispatched scores of elite shinobi to infiltrate its borders. These covert operatives collected intelligence and scouted targets, preparing for an eventual strike. The nations knew the Poison Village's toxin-based techniques were devastating, so they aimed to sow discord among its ranks. Divide and conquer, they called it. At the same time, they quietly unleashed a propaganda campaign across the ninja world, determined to poison public opinion against the village and undermine its legitimacy. Through their own channels, the 5 great nations unleashed a torrent of slander against the Poison Village, portraying it as a cold-blooded, malevolent force that mercilessly slays innocents. Their aim was clear: to stamp a deeply negative image of the Poison Village into the hearts of the ninja world, and by doing so, cut it off entirely from its peers. Though nearly all the rumors were fabricated, in an age marked by information blackouts and widespread panic, those tales proved more than enough to sow fear and misunderstanding. As one Konoha strategist muttered, "If we strike head-on, we'll only invite disaster." Konohagakure itself was still reeling from the sudden appearance of a mysterious shinobi known only as Virgil. He had left few survivors in his wake, but it wasn't just his body count that unnerved the village, it was his mastery of space-time ninjutsu. Rumors ran wild about his origins. No one knew whom he served or where he came from, only that he was virtually unstoppable. Now, with the Poison Village looming on the horizon, Konoha's leaders grew even more wary. Shimura Danzo studied these developments with particular interest. This was precisely the sort of covert threat he thrived on: shadowy forces, half-told stories, and the ever-present possibility of a deadly new weapon. Quietly, he began to assemble his plans, determined to uncover the truth behind both Virgil and the Poison Village before Konoha found itself besieged from every side. Shimura Danzo, celebrated for his cunning and mastery of covert operations, saw a golden opportunity in the Poison Ninja Village's internal divisions. He was convinced that, just as he had once manipulated Yuyin Village and wrested control of the Akatsuki organization without spilling a drop of blood, he could employ the same subtle tactics here. By exploiting their contradictions from within, he believed he could bring key figures into his orbit and render the village pliant to his designs. Across the great nations, the Poison Ninja Village still inspired dread. Their shinobi might seem fragile, most specialized only in poison escapes, noxious gas techniques, and the handling of toxin-coated tools. A few even dabbled in the 3-body technique, though without notable skill. Yet in actual combat, their poisonous arsenal could turn any skirmish into a slaughter. Even replacing one of their genin with a single chunin or several genin from another village could decisively shift the body count in their favor. Inside the Poison Ninja Village, confidence ran so high it bordered on arrogance. They firmly believed no outsider could stand against their leader and their Ambu captain. Their hierarchy was rigidly defined. Jinin answered only to orders. Chunin automatically commanded a 5 Jinin squad, and Jonin held the rank and responsibilities of a captain. In Danzo's eyes, all it would take was a well-placed whisper, a hint of doubt, and this formidable fortress of toxins would crumble from within. Ethan commanded 5 Chunin under his direct supervision. Wesker chose not to subdivide them further. Instead, he arranged them in a straightforward pyramid hierarchy. This simple structure not only clarified the chain of command, but also made all his logistical calculations far more efficient. Chapter 920, The Shadow Plan. A single row of candles cast trembling light across the secret council chamber of the Poison Ninja Village. In that dim glow, Wesker's piercing eyes and Alex Mercer's chiseled features took on an almost otherworldly intensity. Before them stretched a vast, detailed map of the shinobi world, the water country to the north, the fire country to the south, and between them, the strategically vital waves country. Clustered around those realms were the legendary 5 great ninja villages, Konogakure, Sunagakure, Kumogakure, Iwagakure, each shining like a distant star, even as they warred ceaselessly for supremacy. The movements of the 5 great villages, Wesker murmured, tapping his fingertips against the tabletop in a slow, deliberate rhythm, arise not from loyalty or honor, but from raw self-interest. His voice was low, resonant, as if each word were a calculated strike in a larger game of chess. They see only their own advantage, yet their constant jockeying creates an opening for us. He paused, pressing his fingertips harder against the wood. Though our Poison Ninja Village lies in a remote corner of the world, our mastery of forbidden techniques and advanced weaponry rivals, if not surpasses, any of the major powers. Let those who sneer at us learn what it means to face our wrath. Their internal conflicts have handed us the perfect moment to demonstrate our true strength. A slow, confident smile curved Alex Mercer's lips. He had long admired Wesker's ambition and strategic brilliance. As Mercer leaned forward, shadows flickered on his face, hinting at the daring opportunism he was ready to unleash under Wesker's command. Silence fell between them, heavy with promise. In that flickering candlelight, a new era was taking shape, one in which the Poison Ninja Village would no longer hide in the shadows, but seize its destiny at the very heart of the shinobi world. Ethan slipped silently into the darkened command chamber, pausing behind the 2 figures already gathered before the hollow screen. Albert Wesker's smooth voice cut through the low hum of machinery. "They're so short-sighted," Wesker said, tapping a fingertip against the console's edge. "They chase after every fleeting advantage, but fail to recognize the true power that could turn the tables completely." He swiped across the display, and dozens of live feed windows flickered to life. Each one showed a lone ninja, clad in unfamiliar garb, prowling along the outer perimeter of the Poison Ninja Village. They moved with cautious steps, slipping between shadows as if daring detection. "These infiltrators are only the advance guard," Wesker continued, eyes gleaming. "The real test is still to come." Alex Mercer stepped closer to the screen, his expression keen. "So what's the plan? Do we take them out immediately, or—" He trailed off, curiosity ringing in his voice. Wesker let out a dry chuckle. "Sure, we could neutralize them on the spot, but that approach is crude. It lacks subtlety, and more importantly, it won't showcase our strategic finesse." Ethan watched them exchange looks. Even at this distance, he could sense Mercer's eagerness and Wesker's calculating confidence. Neither rivaled Ethan's own hunger to prove himself, but he would wait for the right moment to announce his presence. Wesker leaned forward, lips curling into a thin smile. "Instead, we'll let them believe the village is unprepared. We'll tighten our traps, redirect our defenses, and then we'll unveil a little surprise of our own. By the time they realize their mistake, it'll be far too late." Mercer nodded, rubbing his chin. "A controlled funnel. Interesting. And you think the 5 great villages will be too busy chasing distractions to notice our true target?" "Precisely." Wesker's gaze drifted to Ethan, as though assessing him anew. "We're not just going to outfight them, we're going to outthink them. And if all goes to plan, the Poison Village will remain our secret weapon." Ethan felt a thrill spark up his spine. Let them underestimate theirs. Let them be dazzled by what they saw. Soon, they'd discover that the greatest power lay not in brute force, but in the mind that wielded it. He stepped forward, voice calm but firm. Then it settled. We'll set the stage and let our adversaries play along, until they walk right into our web. Wesker's smile widened, and Mercer clapped Ethan on the shoulder. From the shadows of the chamber, Ethan surveyed the schematics on the screen, ready to demonstrate that, when it came to strategy, no one could outmaneuver him. Alex, your blacklight virus ability is the linchpin of our deeper strategy. He pivoted to face Alex. I need you to extract the personalities and memories of any ninja or other key figures you've absorbed. Then you must meticulously modify and disguise them. These clones will form our intelligence network, infiltrating the 5 great nations and rival ninja villages. They'll gather intelligence for us and, when needed, sow chaos to weaken our enemies from within. A cold smile curved Alex Mercer's lips. He could feel the near-perfect blacklight virus pulsing through his veins, the product of countless experiments and fusions. This power let him consume life, replicate abilities, and even create new beings. He understood that his very existence was both the sharpest blade and the most secretive shield. Splitting personalities and memories is child's play for me. His eyes sparkled with the thrill of the unknown as he nodded. I'm ready for the challenge. But the question is, how do we ensure these fragments blend seamlessly into their target environments? Wesker nodded thoughtfully. His long fingers traced the map until they paused at the border between the Kingdom of Waves and its neighbors. The Kingdom of Waves, he said quietly. This seemingly peaceful little realm will be the springboard for our outward expansion. He met Ethan's gaze, eyes alight with intent. Our foothold there is delicate. The moment conflict breaks out, we risk becoming nothing more than a battleground between rival powers. That's why we need tactics that can adapt on the fly, and why your unique talents are crucial to our covert strategy. Turning fully to Ethan, Wesker continued, I want you to personally select and deploy our most elite operatives, your shadow troops. Each one will carry a fragment of your own memories and skills, but remain an independent agent, meticulously programmed to fulfill a single purpose. Some will masquerade as merchants, others as travelers, or even ninjas, infiltrating every corner of the 5 kingdoms and beyond. Ethan's eyes sparkled with excitement at the prospect. Ethan understood that what lay before them was an unprecedented challenge and the perfect opportunity to showcase the true power of the blacklight virus. What's our plan? He asked, leaning forward in anticipation. Wesker tapped a folder of dossiers on the table. First, we'll identify and eliminate key targets, senior ninja masters, prominent political figures, even core members of the Ninja Village Council. With them out of the way, we can deploy our virus avatars. These avatars have their own identities and implanted memories, forged and rigorously trained by us to move freely in any environment. Then, he continued, we'll establish a network of secret strongholds throughout the Kingdom of Waves and the surrounding territories. These facilities will serve as safe houses and communication hubs for our avatars. From there, we can monitor their activities in real time and adjust our strategy on the fly. Alex sat forward, steepling his fingers. Don't worry, Wesker. I'll personally oversee every phase to ensure the plan proceeds without a hitch. He nodded once, determination in his eyes. Wesker's voice took on a sharp edge. Next, we need to select targets for the memory division process. He leaned forward, folding his arms. First, any candidate must offer real intelligence value without raising suspicion. Senior ninjas fit the bill perfectly. They guard their village's deepest secrets. High-ranking politicians are also prime targets, since they shape national policy. Above all, you must have consumed them very recently, so their memories and skills are still fresh in your mind. Ethan inclined his head and closed his eyes. In an instant, fleeting images of every life he'd absorbed flashed through his consciousness, each a unique vault of knowledge, skill, and covert intel. When he opened his eyes, a confident gleam shone in them. I've already identified several ideal candidates, he said. Wesker nodded, a satisfied smile touching his lips. Excellent. Now we move on to splitting and reprogramming their memories. This phase is extremely delicate, and mistakes are unacceptable. He stepped to a heavy steel table, slid open a drawer, and withdrew a small, intricately crafted metal box. Its surface was etched with cryptic symbols that seemed to pulse under the dim light. "Get everything ready," Wesker ordered, "and be precise. There's no room for error." Inside the box lay several ordinary-looking syringes filled with the control serum the team had painstakingly developed. Once injected, the drug would compel the split bodies to carry out orders without question, while still allowing each to think independently. Chapter 921, Hunter Attacks. Ethan sat in the pale glow of the laboratory's overhead lights, his arms folded across his chest. Across from him, Wesker laid out the last and most dangerous phase of their plan. "We'll combine these specially bred agents with your blacklight virus enhancements to thoroughly program each divided host," Wesker explained, tapping a schematic on the metal table between them. "First, you'll extract precise fragments of personality and memory from our targets. Then you'll imprint those fragments into the new carriers." He paused, meeting Ethan's gaze. "During the transfer, we'll use tailored serums to convince each subject that they truly are that person, yet remain utterly loyal to our commands." Ethan nodded, processing the implications. This wouldn't be a conventional battle. No gunfire, no smoke. It would be a silent war of deception, more ruthless than any open conflict. Wesker leaned in, voice low. "Next, we'll deploy an encrypted network to monitor these shadows in real time. Whenever they stray or suspicion arises, we pull the strings and adjust their directives." He swept a hand toward a world map pinned on the wall, 5 countries circled in red. "Finally, we'll infiltrate the major nations and allied ninja villages. Our shadows will gather intelligence, build sleeper cells, even carry out surgical strikes when needed. We'll poison the opposition from within, clearing the path for the rise of the new ninja village." Silence fell as Ethan let the scope of their scheme sink in. Sleeper agents, mind-programmed and hidden across 5 sovereign states, an invisible army at their disposal. "Any questions?" Wesker asked. Ethan's reply was measured, almost calm. "Just one. When do we begin?" Wesker's lips curved into a thin smile. "Now." Determination and fierce anticipation shone in his eyes. "Let's get started. Let the 5 great shinobi villages taste true fear." Alex's words echoed off the stone walls, and the hush that followed was heavy with anticipation. In the dim light, Ethan studied the exchange between Alex and Wesker, his jaw tightening. "Black light versus white zetsu," he repeated, trying to suppress the unease creeping up his spine. On paper, Wesker's plan was flawless, tailor-made to exploit Alex's extraordinary abilities. Yet Ethan couldn't shake the unsettling déjà vu. It all too closely mirrored a dark chapter in shinobi history, the insidious feud between black zetsu and white zetsu. White zetsu had spawned countless clones, most so weak they served only as scouts, yet a handful, like the rogue Fae, possessed power enough to rival the greatest ninja. Worse still, white zetsu could absorb another's chakra and assume their exact form and mannerisms, fooling even the keenest sensory shinobi. It was one such impostor who had once infiltrated the allied shinobi forces, sowing discord from within and nearly tearing the alliance apart. Now Alex intended to harness that very same terror and wield it against the 5 great villages. By unleashing black light against a white zetsu duplicate, they would deliver a spectacle of deception so chilling that the world's most powerful shinobi would be left uncertain whom to trust. But as Ethan weighed the risks, he wondered, could their enemies, hardened by history, see through the ruse before it was too late? Though no one could say exactly how many white zetsu units had infiltrated the ninja world, each capable of splitting into countless mirror image bodies, it was only a matter of time before they were discovered. Their talent for camouflage and covert missions made them particularly dangerous, and even the most cautious shinobi risked stumbling across one of their hidden clones. Within the Akatsuki, word of the mysterious poison ninja village had not gone unnoticed. While it was true that its shinobi were not renowned for overwhelming brute strength, their mastery of toxic techniques was enough to draw the organization's attention. A resource like that could prove invaluable. Haijue, the shadowy architect of so many of Akatsuki's chems, was never one to ignore the rise of potential power. If he could bend the village's poisonous arsenal to his own ends, it would only accelerate his grand designs. And so, with characteristic subtlety, Haijue slipped into the land of waves. Under the guise of a lone pilgrim, he sniffed out every rumor, every thread of gossip that might lead him to the Poison Ninja village. His mission was twofold: to scout their strength and to lay the groundwork for an alliance. The land of waves. Haijue mused to himself, his tendrils of consciousness drifting through the crowds of the port city. From his vantage point, he watched samurai patrols and fishermen unloading their catch, all blissfully unaware of the threat lurking just beyond their sight. To him, it was an odd choice for the Poison Village's headquarters. Why stake your future on a place so unglamorous? He had expected something grander, perhaps the fertile valleys of the land of bamboo or the misty highlands of the land of snow. But then, the land of waves offered its own peculiar advantages. The ever-present sea breeze carried both salt and fog, perfect for disguising the scent of the village's noxious toxins. And the narrow coastal roads meant that any invader would be funneled through a handful of choke points, ideal for the kind of deadly ambushes the Poison Ninja excelled at. Satisfied with his deductions, Haijue's grin widened. Every new piece of information brought him closer to securing a potent new ally, and another step forward for the Akatsuki's hidden agenda. Soon, he would meet the Poison Village's leaders face to face, and when he did, he would ensure that their venom served Akatsuki's cause. They'd never mastered the art of concealment, so from the moment they'd appeared, the whole ninja world had known their names and feared them. Branded public enemies, they nevertheless pressed on. Ethan was determined to learn everything he could about the Poison Ninja village. Standing beside him was Uchiha Obito. "Is that the Poison Ninja village?" Obito asked, eyes fixed on the settlement looming in the distance, shrouded in an ominous purple-black mist. By its size alone, the place must be immense. "That fog is the village's barrier," Ethan explained. "It's the toxic mist technique, deadly and notoriously hard to penetrate." Ethan scoffed. "I've faced far worse poisons. This mist is nothing." Obito chuckled, clearly amused. "You really don't take it seriously, do you? But why should you? With Kamui at my command, I can slip through any defense." His calm confidence betrayed no concern. To Obito, the poisonous barrier was no more than a trivial hurdle, one more mystery to conquer on his path to greater power. Together, they set off toward the village, ready to test the limits of their strength against a defense no one else had yet overcome. Ethan gripped his kunai and studied the floating shroud of violet mist before him. "Let's see what this so-called Poison Ninja village is all about," he murmured, stepping forward without a trace of hesitation. In truth, Ethan's body no longer occupied the physical plane. He existed within his divine space, a personal dimension that overlaid reality like a shadowy screen. To anyone relying on mundane senses, the poisonous fog barrier should have been impassable, but Ethan simply walked through it, unfazed. What he didn't know was that Wesker and Alex had secretly seeded the mist with countless microscopic viruses, sophisticated biosensors that served as invisible sentries. No movement within the barrier went unnoticed. Even Ethan's legendary stealth, which had allowed him to slip into other ninja villages undetected, meant nothing here. The moment his chakra-charged projection materialized in the violet haze, the virus network activated. Alarms rippled through the fog, instantly transmitting Ethan's exact coordinates, his speed, and even predicted escape routes straight to the Poison Ninja Village's command center, Wesker and Alex themselves. In an instant, the hunter had become the hunted. "It appears we have a rat," her impressive visitor. Wesker hadn't expected anyone to breach the Poison Ninja Village's spatial defenses. Yet here was Ethan, emerging through the lethal fog barrier completely unscathed, and his viral feedback signal showed no anomalies. Since its founding, no one had ever stormed the Poison Ninja Village so brazenly. Intrigued, Wesker decided to toy with his intruder. "Alex, release our summons," he ordered through the comm link that connected them across the main god space. "Copy that," Alex replied curtly. "Summoning technique, Hunter." In an instant, a massive, sinewy beast materialized beside Alex. Like all their war creatures, it had been bioengineered in accordance with this world's summoning lore, then fused and stabilized with their signature blacklight virus. Each of their summoned beasts was a one-off creation, bonded exclusively to its master. The black light strain was simply too domineering to mix with any other pathogen. Any attempt at synthesis only resulted in non-viable hybrids. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't forge anything stronger than what they already commanded. Wesker surveyed the newcomer and his own guardian with a predatory grin. The real game was just beginning. Under Alex's command, 2 hunters materialized at the edge of the clearing. These hulking creatures had once served as summoned beasts for the Poison Village's ninjas. Today, they were out to test the waters. Ethan took a steadying breath. He'd planned to strike straight for the Poison Ninja leader, but a sudden unease roiled through him. Before he could move, Zetsu's voice crackled in his mind. "Watch out, Ethan. Something's coming." Almost at once, Zetsu sank beneath the soil, vanishing from sight. Ethan braced himself, and then the hunters lunged. Their scaled hides rippled as they advanced with terrifying speed, fangs dripping iridescent venom. How had they detected him? Ethan's pupils constricted as he pivoted to face the first beast, chakra already gathering in his hand. There was no turning back now. Chapter 922, Obito's Viral Infestation. The forest lay cloaked in shadow, moonlight so scarce it only hinted at the outlines of swaying branches and gnarled trunks. Amid that darkness, Uchiha Obito and Black Zetsu pressed themselves against a massive oak, their forms all but swallowed by the night. Both moved with purpose, eyes sharp and alert, as 2 figures materialized on the narrow path before them. These weren't ordinary wildlife. Each silhouette advanced on 2 legs, draped in the skin of a beast, long limbs, clawed feet, and a low, predatory gait. A faint glow of chakra rippled around them, rippling the air like heat haze. Obito's brow furrowed. "Summoned beasts?" he whispered, skepticism lacing his tone. Black Zetsu's voice, inaudible to any eavesdropper, slithered into Obito's mind. "Not standard summons," he hissed. "Their chakra signatures rival those of Jonin-level shinobi and bear traces of artificial modification. Someone has engineered these creatures as living weapons." Obito's gaze hardened. In the world of shinobi, a summoning contract was sacred, a pact that bound a ninja to call forth a beast ally in battle. But these abominations were no voluntary partners. Their unnatural strength spoke of deeper schemes, the kind that threatened to warp the very balance of power. Together, Obito and Black Zetsu melted back into the underbrush, hearts pounding with the revelation that a hidden hand was readying its pawns for war, and their next move would decide who controlled these twisted creations. Summoned beasts serve shinobi in almost every field. Direct combat, reconnaissance, communications, exploration, you name it. Like their summoners, these creatures can grow stronger through training, and some even learn jutsu of their own. Wild. Summons are simply animals captured or genetically altered by ninja. They obey basic commands, but they're temporary and lack independent thought or speech. During Nagato's attack on Konoha, for example, the animal path exploited the Rinnegan's space-time abilities to unleash hundreds of modified beasts, laying waste to the village's defenses. And as Yamashiro Oba's notes in Volume 47 reveal, summons needn't be born in nature. They can also be manufactured in a lab. For Ethan, converting his hunters into summoned beasts made perfect sense. These hunters already possessed near-human intelligence. Once infused with chakra, they became truly fearsome. By using ninja physiology as their template, he forged warriors who combined raw physical might with the versatility of shinobi. The 2 summoned beasts before him boasted physiques on par with special jonin, no small feat. Ethan's lips curved into a sneer. "They actually sent creatures this powerful to deal with me? I'm more than a match for them." Contempt glinted in his dark eyes as the frog-like hunters slunk forward, their skins drawn tight over spindly limbs. One lunged, jaws gaping wide, rows of serrated teeth gleaming. Yet its attack passed straight through Ethan's chest as if he were nothing but mist. "Wood release. Cutting technique," Ethan bellowed. In an instant, his forearms cracked open, and gnarled spikes of wood burst forth like mushrooms after a spring rain. The forest floor rapidly transformed into a forest of deadly thorns. A keening whistle snapped through the air as the razor-sharp stakes shot toward the 2 beasts. The hunters clearly saw the danger, yet they didn't retreat. Instead, they leapt and twisted with inhuman agility, darting between the wooden spears as though dancing through a storm. But Ethan's technique was far from ordinary. Once the long wooden thorns struck their mark, they split and fanned out inside the target, tearing at flesh and bone from within. In an instant, the skirmish escalated to a white-hot crescendo, the forest shaken by the snapping crack of splintered wood and the hunters' low, guttural roars as they twisted and vaulted aside. "You're nothing more than pathetic insects," Obito sneered, molding chakra into his wood-release technique. Each finger motion unleashed another salvo of razor-sharp spikes. But rather than charge in headlong, the hunters displayed remarkable discipline and battlefield savvy. They melted into the forest's shadows, using uneven ground and thick trunks for cover. Every leap and roll kept them narrowly beyond reach of Obito's assault, and every feint invited him to overcommit. Then they countered with lightning-sharp blades of their own. From their perch in the adjacent containment chamber, Wesker and Alex watched the spectacle through high-speed viral monitors. "Curious," Wesker murmured. "They evade his attacks as though Obito doesn't exist." Alex frowned at the display. "His chakra constructs are real, and so are those wooden thorns. It can't be mere trickery." "Then where," Wesker wondered, "is the man himself hiding?" Ethan frowned at the readouts on his monitor. "There's something strange happening with my virus." Wesker looked up. "What do you mean?" Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "It infected Uchiha Obito just fine, then went into overdrive. But its connection to our network keeps cutting out. It's intermittent. Normally, blacklight virus obeys my will absolutely. No matter where an infected host is, Antarctica, the Arctic, I stay linked to every cell. It's a perfect hive mind. This glitch is unprecedented." He closed his eyes and reached out with his consciousness, searching for the virus's signal inside Obito's chakra network. For a moment he felt the familiar creeping tendrils of the virus, then the link fractured. It slipped beyond the bounds of his perception into some alien realm he couldn't penetrate. Ethan's lips tightened. "It's phased out of our reality. I can't reach it." Wesker leaned forward, intrigued. "Obito's space-time abilities, his Kamui, could they be interfering with your virus?" Ethan considered the possibility. Finally, he nodded. "Maybe. Regardless, we need to force it back. I'm going to trigger the corrosive phase. Let the virus burn through his defenses until it reestablishes contact." Deep inside Obito's body, the dormant black light virus began to stir once more, its invisible tendrils creeping eagerly toward their host's bloodstream, readying to reshape him from within. Ethan released the black light virus the moment he heard Obito's reply. In his mind, he felt the pathogen stirring like a slumbering beast awakening, and everywhere in Uchiha Obito's body, the superpathogen began to spread. This was no ordinary microbe. The blacklight virus was a highly evolved organism, capable of self-replication, rapid mutation, and even the manipulation of its host's physiology. Like rivulets of ink and water, it wove through Obito's blood vessels, probing for a weakness. It penetrated every cell and reached deep into his bioelectric fields, seeking to corrupt the very currents of his life force. Under Ethan's mental command, the virus raced along Obito's chakra meridians, methodically hunting down the critical energy nodes that sustained his defenses. Through their psychic link, Ethan experienced the struggle firsthand, each surge of resistance, each pulse of hostile energy. Then, to his shock, he realized the virus was no longer behaving as he'd programmed it to. An unknown power within Obito's body had triggered a mutation. The new strain broke free of Ethan's full control and proved far harder to extinguish. As he grappled with this unexpected twist, Ethan understood that defeating Obito would demand far more than a simple viral assault.